In the early hours of May 14, 2008, Brandon Swanson, a 19-year-old college student from Marshall, Minnesota, vanished without a trace after his car became stuck in a ditch. What makes this case particularly haunting is the 47-minute phone call Brandon had with his parents just moments before he disappeared. Brandon Victor Swanson was born on January 30th, 1989, to Brian and Annette Swanson. A native of Marshall, Minnesota, Brandon had recently completed his freshman year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby, where he was enrolled in a one-year wind turbine program. By all accounts, Brandon was a typical 19-year-old, independent, social, and looking forward to his future. On the evening of May 13, 2008, Brandon attended two parties to celebrate the end of the academic year. The first was in Lynn, Minnesota, just 7 miles from his home in Marshall. Later, he drove 40 minutes to Canby for another gathering. Friends at both parties reported that while Brandon had consumed alcohol, he did not appear intoxicated when he left Canby around midnight to drive back home. What should have been a routine drive took a dramatic turn when Brandon's Chevy Lumina ran into a ditch. Uninjured but unable to free his vehicle, Brandon called his parents at 1:54 a.m., asking them to pick him up. He confidently told them he was between Lind and Marshall, about 30 minutes from home. Brian and Annette Swanson immediately set out to find their son. As Brandon's parents drove to the area he described, they remained on the phone with him. However, it quickly became apparent that something was amiss. Brandon insisted he could see the lights of Lind, yet his parents saw no sign of him or his vehicle. Frustrated but determined, Brandon told his parents he would start walking towards the lights he could see in the distance. For 47 minutes, Brandon stayed on the phone with his mother as he walked. Then, at approximately 3:10 a.m., the call took a chilling turn. Brandon suddenly exclaimed, "Oh shit," before the line went dead. Despite repeated attempts, his parents were unable to re-establish contact. Alarmed by the sudden loss of contact, Brandon's parents continued their search throughout the night. At 6:30 a.m., with no sign of their son, they reported him missing to the Lynn Police Department. Initially, law enforcement was hesitant to act, given that Brandon, at 19, was legally an adult. However, as the hours ticked by, with no word from Brandon, authorities agreed to open a missing person case and launch a search. The investigation took an unexpected turn when police obtained Brandon's cell phone records. The data revealed that Brandon was nowhere near Lind or Marshall as he had believed. Instead, his last known location was near the small town of Taunton, approximately 25 miles from where he thought he was. This discovery highlighted the disorienting nature of the rural landscape at night and raised questions about Brandon's state of mind during his final phone call. On May 15th, investigators located Brandon's Chevy Lumina in a ditch off a field approach near Taunton. Lincoln County Sheriff Jack Vizecki described the scene. It was off the side of a field approach, and the vehicle was hung up. It's sort of a sharp incline. Nothing major, but enough that the car would get hung up, so the wheels are too high off the ground to get any traction. The car's doors were open and the keys were missing, but there were no other signs of foul play or struggle. With the discovery of Brandon's vehicle, the search intensified. Helicopters scanned the area from above, while bloodhounds were brought in to track Brandon's scent on the ground. The dogs led investigators to a troubling location, the banks of the Yellow Medicine River. At the time, the river was approximately 15 feet deep, raising concerns that Brandon may have fallen in. Sheriff Vizecki later stated, At the time, the dogs indicated, and it was believed, that he must have fallen in the river in that area. So we searched that area on the premise that he'd be washed downstream. However, despite extensive searches of the river and surrounding areas, no evidence was found to confirm this theory or to indicate what had happened to Brandon. In 2010, 2 years after Brandon's disappearance, the case was handed over to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA. The agency set up a dedicated tip line, hoping to generate new leads. By 2015, approximately 90 tips had been reported, but none provided the breakthrough investigators desperately sought. In 2009, less than a year after he went missing, the Minnesota legislature passed Brandon's Law. This legislation, signed by then-Governor Tim Pawlenty on May 7, 2009, requires law enforcement agencies in Minnesota to conduct immediate preliminary investigations into missing persons cases, regardless of the person's age. The law was a direct response to the initial hesitation by authorities to act on Brandon's disappearance due to his adult status. Despite the passage of time, efforts to locate Brandon have not ceased. In October 2015, a new search was conducted, focusing on farm fields northwest of Porter, Minnesota, near where Brandon's car was found. Ken Anderson, who organized the search, stated that cadaver dogs were still getting the scent that says there are remains of a human in this area. During this search, a bone was discovered in a field, but subsequent analysis determined it was not human. In November 2015, the search for Brandon gained additional resources when Texas Equus Search, a renowned search and recovery team, joined the effort. The organization brought sophisticated technology to aid in the search, including remote-controlled aircraft, underwater sonar detection equipment, and other specialized search tools. Despite these extensive efforts and the application of advanced technology, Brandon Swanson's whereabouts remain a mystery. The case continues to baffle investigators and haunt the local community. The last words Brandon spoke to his mother, "Oh shit," have become a chilling focal point of the investigation, leaving many to speculate about what he might have encountered in those final moments. The Swanson family has never given up hope of finding answers. Brian and Annette Swanson have become advocates for missing persons, working tirelessly to keep their son's case in the public eye and to support other families facing similar ordeals. They maintain that someone, somewhere, must know something about what happened to Brandon that night. As of 2023, 15 years after Brandon's disappearance, the case remains open. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension continues to solicit tips and information from the public. As the years pass, the hope for closure remains, fueled by the dedication of law enforcement, the perseverance of the Swanson family, and the collective desire to uncover the truth about what happened on that fateful night in May 2008. In the quiet town of Hardin, Montana, a disturbing case unfolded that would shine a spotlight on the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. On August 29, 2019, the body of 18-year-old Kaysera Stops Pretty Places was discovered in a residential neighborhood, setting off a chain of events that would raise serious questions about law enforcement practices and the treatment of Indigenous victims. Kaysera, a member of the Crow and Northern Cheyenne tribes, was known for her outspoken nature and commitment to social justice. Just days before her disappearance, she had filmed and posted a video of local law enforcement officers allegedly beating her 15-year-old brother who used a wheelchair at the Crow Fair. This act of citizen journalism would later be scrutinized as a potential motive in her untimely death. On August 24, 2019, Kaysera was last seen by her family in Harden. She was living with her grandmother, Yolanda Fraser, at the time. When Kaysera failed to return home that night, her grandmother attempted to report her missing to local authorities. However, despite the credible concern, no official missing persons report was filed. The following day, August 25th, Kaysera's aunt, Percelia Brown Bulltail, also tried to report her niece as missing. She was told by law enforcement that there was a mandatory waiting period before such a report could be filed, a claim that would later be revealed as false, as Montana has no such waiting period for missing persons reports. These early missteps in the handling of Kaysera's disappearance would set the tone for an investigation plagued by alleged negligence and bureaucratic obstacles. As days passed without word from Kaysera, her family's worst fears were realized when a jogger discovered her body on August 29th, lying face down in a pile of tree trimmings behind homes in a residential area of Harden. Despite the body being found on August 29th, it wasn't until September 11th that Kaysera's family was officially notified of her death. This 2-week delay raised serious questions about the handling of the case and the prioritization of Indigenous victims. During this period, Kaysera's family received multiple tips about the possibility of the body being hers, but their attempts to identify her were repeatedly rebuffed by authorities. County Coroner Terry Bullis, who also owned and operated a local mortuary, insisted that Kaysera's body must be cremated before it could be returned to her family. This decision was made without consulting Kaysera's legal guardians, her father Alan and grandmother Yolanda, and was opposed by her mother on religious grounds. Despite this opposition, the cremation proceeded. The cremation of Kaysera's remains before a thorough investigation could be conducted raised alarm bells for the family and their supporters. It potentially destroyed crucial evidence that could have shed light on the circumstances of her death. As the investigation progressed, or rather failed to progress, a number of disturbing details emerged. Jason Cummings, a resident of the neighborhood where Kaysera was found, reported seeing police remove Kaysera's cell phone from her pocket, ostensibly to contact her family. However, no such contact was ever made, and the whereabouts and contents of the phone remained a mystery. Perhaps most troublingly, sources suggested that one of the responding officers when Kaysera's body was discovered may have been the same officer seen in the video Kaysera had posted just days before her death, showing the alleged abuse of her brother. This potential connection cast a shadow over the entire investigation and raised questions about possible conflicts of interest or even retaliation. On September 19, 2019, nearly a month after Kaysera's disappearance, her grandmother, Yolanda, and father Alan finally managed to meet with Captain Mike Fuss of the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office. The meeting revealed a disturbing lack of coordination and communication within the department. Captain Fuss appeared confused about the family's identity and admitted he had been too busy with other cases to return their numerous calls. During this meeting, Captain Fuss made several statements that raised red flags. He claimed that if an investigating officer arrives at a crime scene first, they don't have to secure it, a practice that goes against standard police procedure. He also stated that they couldn't access Kaysera's phone, even though it had been in their possession for weeks. Perhaps most alarmingly, Fuss revealed that he had taken over the investigation from the initial investigator, Jeremy Middlestead, because Middlestead couldn't handle it. This admission suggested internal issues within the department that may have compromised the investigation from the start. Adding to the family's frustration, County Coroner Terry Bullis seemed to shift between his roles as coroner and funeral homeowner when convenient, often avoiding direct answers to the family's questions. On September 16th, police told the family that when the toxicology report arrived, it would likely show there is drug or alcohol use detected, that the cause would be exposure to alcohol or substance. This statement, made before any official results were available, raised concerns about potential bias in the investigation. The lack of transparency extended to other officials as well. Bighorn County Attorney Jay Harris, when meeting with the family on November 19, 2019, was defensive and evasive. He admitted there had been a gap in the active investigation due to personnel issues, confirming the family's fears about the mishandling of the case. As months passed without significant progress in the investigation, Kaysera's family took matters into their own hands. They organized protests, rallies, and vigils to keep her case in the public eye and demand justice. On September 23, 2019, a candlelight vigil and MMIW, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, march were held in Hardin, drawing attention to Kaysera's case and the broader crisis of violence against Indigenous women. The family's efforts to seek justice extended beyond local authorities. They reached out to the FBI, hoping for federal intervention. However, they were told that the FBI couldn't investigate without more evidence confirming that Kaysera's death occurred on the reservation, a stipulation that seemed to ignore the possibility that her death might have occurred off-reservation but still warranted federal attention due to her tribal status. In response to mounting pressure, Bighorn County announced the creation of a Missing and Murdered Persons and Investigation Task Force on October 1, 2019. However, this appeared to be more of a public relations move than a substantive change in investigative practices, as the family continued to face obstacles in obtaining information about Kaysera's case. Throughout this period, discrepancies in official accounts continued to emerge. For instance, the family was told that Kaysera's autopsy was conducted on August 27, 2019, 2 days before her body was reportedly found. When questioned about this, officials provided conflicting dates, further eroding trust in the investigation. On May 5, 2021, nearly 2 years after Kaysera's death, a documentary titled Say Her Name was released, featuring her case alongside other unsolved cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people in Montana. The film aimed to draw media attention to these often ignored cases and pressure authorities to take action. Despite these efforts, progress in Kaysera's case remained frustratingly slow. It wasn't until August 30th, 2024, 5 years after her death, that a significant breakthrough occurred. Coinciding with a rally held by Kaysera's family to honor her memory, criminal charges were filed against a man alleged to have been one of the last people to see Kaysera alive. A warrant was issued for his arrest on 2 counts of criminal endangerment and 2 alternative counts of assault with a weapon. This development, while a step forward, raised questions about why it had taken 5 years to bring charges in a case that had garnered significant public attention. It also highlighted the persistent issues in the investigation and prosecution of crimes against Indigenous people. However, the charges filed in 2024 are just the beginning of the legal process. As the case moves forward, it will likely face scrutiny over the long delay in bringing charges and the handling of evidence. Questions remain about the exact circumstances of Kaysera's death, the potential involvement of others, and whether her activism played a role in her fate. In the sweltering summer of 1992, a routine road trip became the starting point of a chilling mystery that would haunt America for decades. Tammy Zywicki, a vibrant 21-year-old college senior, vanished without a trace while driving back to Grinnell College in Iowa. What began as car trouble on the side of Interstate 80 in Illinois spiraled into a nightmarish saga of abduction, murder, and an investigation that would leave more questions than answers. Tammy was no ordinary college student. A double major in art history and Spanish at Grinnell College, she had just returned from studying abroad in Madrid. With a passion for photography and sports, Tammy was on the cusp of starting an internship at the Art Institute in Chicago. Her future seemed bright and full of promise. On August 23, 1992, Tammy and her younger brother Darren left their family home in New Jersey, bound for their respective colleges. They made a brief stop in Pittsburgh to visit family before continuing their journey. The siblings arrived in Evanston, Illinois on August 22nd, where Tammy dropped Darren off at Northwestern University. She spent the night with a friend, planning to complete the final leg of her journey to Grinnell the next day. Little did anyone know that August 23rd would be the last day Tammy Zywicki was seen alive. As she set out on I-80 West, her 1985 white Pontiac T1000 began experiencing problems. More than 60 witnesses would later report seeing Tammy pulled over on the shoulder near mile marker 83, peering under the hood of her car. What happened in the following hours remains a mystery, but the consequences were devastating. Tammy never arrived at Grinnell College. Her parents, Joanne and Hank Zywicki, grew increasingly concerned when they didn't receive their daughter's customary call to signal her safe arrival. Their worry turned to panic as hours stretched into days with no word from Tammy. The initial response from law enforcement was frustratingly dismissive. When Tammy's parents contacted the police, they were told she had likely run off with a boyfriend, a theory that ignored the fact that Tammy didn't have a boyfriend and was completely out of character for the responsible student. It wasn't until August 26th, 3 days after Tammy's disappearance, that police finally began to consider foul play as a possibility. By this time, crucial evidence had already been compromised. Tammy's car, which had been towed to a police station, had been handled without proper forensic precautions. No fingerprints were taken, and any potential evidence within the vehicle was now tainted. The only items noted as missing were Tammy's purse and her prized Canon 35mm camera. As the investigation reluctantly gained momentum, a disturbing pattern began to emerge from witness statements. Multiple people reported seeing a tractor-trailer pulled over near Tammy's car. The truck was described as having 2 brownish-orange diagonal stripes on both the cab and the trailer. Even more chilling was the description of the driver. Approximately 6 feet tall, with dark, bushy hair, estimated to be between 30 and 45 years old. Despite these leads, the case seemed to stall. Tammy's family, frustrated with the lack of progress, took matters into their own hands. They reached out to media outlets and missing persons organizations, desperate to keep Tammy's case in the public eye. Students from Northwestern University and Grinnell College rallied to help, distributing flyers and organizing search parties. Then, on September 1st, 1992, came the devastating breakthrough no one wanted. A man pulling off Highway 44 near Joplin, Missouri, some 500 miles from where Tammy was last seen, made a grisly discovery. Wrapped in a red blanket sealed with duct tape was the body of a young woman. Dental records would soon confirm what Tammy's family feared most. Their daughter had been found, and she had been murdered. The autopsy revealed the brutal nature of Tammy's final moments. She had been stabbed 7 times around her heart and sexually assaulted. The pathologist estimated she had been dead between 4 to 7 days. Strangely, Tammy was found wearing different clothes than those she was last seen in, including lacy underwear and a pink bra with the word "love" embroidered on the cup. Items her family insisted were uncharacteristic of Tammy's tomboy style. The red blanket Tammy was wrapped in provided a potential lead. It was manufactured by the Kenworth Truck Company, possibly connecting her murder to the trucking industry. This detail seemed to corroborate witness accounts of the tractor-trailer seen near Tammy's disabled car. As the investigation progressed, several persons of interest emerged. In 1994, Lonnie Beerbrot, a long-haul trucker from Missouri, came under scrutiny. A nurse who had seen Tammy on I-80 recognized Beerbrot when he visited her clinic. He lived close to where Tammy's body was found and had grown up near her last known location. Suspiciously, he had sold his car shortly after Tammy's disappearance and had worked for Kenworth Truck Co. at the time. Despite these coincidences, investigators couldn't definitively tie Beerbrot to the murder, even after he submitted his DNA and they located his old vehicle. In 2007, another potential suspect emerged when Bruce Mendenhall, a trucker from Illinois, was arrested for a separate murder. Authorities considered a possible connection to Tammy's case due to his profession and geographic proximity, but no concrete evidence linked him to her murder. As years passed, the case grew cold. The Tammy Zywicki task force was disbanded in 1994, citing lack of progress. The number of officers assigned to her case dwindled from 14 to just 2. However, the determination to solve Tammy's murder never wavered, especially for her family and certain dedicated investigators. In 2001, Martin McCarthy, a former investigator on Tammy's case, retired and reached out to Joanne Zywicki, offering to help solve the case. McCarthy believed that law enforcement agencies weren't doing enough and felt free to pursue leads without fear of professional repercussions. His efforts brought renewed attention to the case, but still failed to produce a breakthrough. The years that followed saw sporadic developments and reminders of the unsolved crime. In 2015, Tammy's father, Hank Zywicki, passed away without seeing justice for his daughter. Joanne Zywicki, however, continued to advocate tirelessly for the resolution of her daughter's case. As the 30th anniversary of Tammy's disappearance approached in 2022, law enforcement officials made public appeals for new information. They emphasized advancements in DNA technology, hoping that evidence collected decades ago might finally yield results with more sophisticated testing methods. Despite these efforts, key pieces of evidence remain missing. Tammy's Canon 35mm camera, a musical wristwatch with an umbrella on its face, her purse, wallet, and the clothes she was originally wearing have never been recovered. These items could potentially hold crucial clues to identifying her killer. The FBI continues to list Tammy's case as an active investigation. They've released age-progressed sketches of the truck driver seen near Tammy's car, hoping someone might recognize him decades later. A substantial reward, initially set at $50,000 and later increased, remains unclaimed for information leading to an arrest and conviction in the case. In recent years, advances in genetic genealogy have brought new hope to cold cases across the country. While these techniques haven't yet cracked Tammy's case, investigators continue to explore all avenues, including the possibility of using familial DNA to identify her killer. In 2002, on the 30th anniversary of Tammy's disappearance, the FBI renewed its call for information, emphasizing that no detail is too small. They continue to maintain a dedicated tip line for the case, hoping that someone, somewhere, holds the key to unlocking this decades-old mystery. The Zywicki case serves as a stark reminder of the limitations of forensic science in the early 1990s. Today, a single hair or a microscopic trace of DNA might be enough to identify a perpetrator. But in 1992, these techniques were in their infancy. The mishandling of Tammy's car in the early days of the investigation may have destroyed crucial evidence that with today's technology could have cracked the case wide open. While the case has been unsolved for over 3 decades, the continued efforts by law enforcement and the family to find answers prevent Tammy's memory from ever fading from the public. In the quiet town of Berea, Kentucky, a chilling mystery unfolded in the summer of 2013. 18-year-old Brooklyn Farthing, a vibrant young woman with her whole life ahead of her, vanished without a trace. This disappearance would leave a community searching for answers and a family desperate for closure. Brooklyn, known to her friends and family as Brooke, had just graduated high school that June. She was a social butterfly, loved by many for her outgoing personality and spunky attitude. With a passion for cosmetology and the outdoors, Brooke was at a crossroads, contemplating her next steps in life. On June 21, 2013, the day began with a sense of normalcy and celebration. Brooke and her younger sister Paige took their driving tests. Brooke passed, while Paige didn't, a fact that became a light-hearted family joke throughout the day. That evening, the family gathered to celebrate their grandfather's 70th birthday. Little did they know, this would be the last time they would all be together. Later that night, Brooke and Paige attended another birthday party with their cousin. Around 7 or 8 p.m., Paige and the cousin left, but Brooke chose to stay behind with a friend. However, the night took an unexpected turn when Brooke and her friend had a disagreement. The friend wanted to spend the night at a boy's house, which made Brooke uncomfortable. As a result of this argument, Brooke's friend left the party. What happened next would set in motion a series of events that would baffle investigators and haunt Brooke's family for years to come. Witnesses reported seeing Brooke leave the party with 2 men. One of these men was identified as Josh Hensley. The other remains unidentified to this day. In the early hours of June 22, 2013, Brooke Hensley and the unidentified male made a stop to look at horses before dropping off the 3rd man at his house. Brooke and Hensley then proceeded to Hensley's home, a property that was in foreclosure and lacked both running water and electricity. At approximately 4 a.m., Brooke made a call to her sister Paige, asking if their cousin could pick her up. Unfortunately, the cousin had been drinking and was unable to drive. This marked the beginning of Brooke's increasingly desperate attempts to leave Hensley's property. Unable to secure a ride from her family, Brooke reached out to her ex-boyfriend. She made arrangements for him to pick her up around 7 a.m. when he finished work. However, the situation appeared to escalate quickly. Brooke sent a series of alarming text messages to her ex-boyfriend. "Can you hurry? Please hurry. And most disturbingly, I'm scared." Then, approximately an hour later, a perplexing text was sent from Brooke's phone to her ex-boyfriend. "Never mind. I'm okay. I'm going to a party in Rockcastle County." This would be the last communication anyone would receive from Brooke's phone. At 7 a.m. on June 22nd, Josh Hensley returned to his home after reportedly checking on some horses. Upon arrival, he called the fire department to report a fire inside his residence. Hensley claimed that Brooke was still inside the home when the fire started, a claim that would later raise significant questions. As the day progressed, Brooke's absence became increasingly concerning. She had made plans to attend a car show in Somerset, Kentucky at 2 p.m. with friends, but never showed up. It was at this point that her family began to worry. Brooke's oldest sister, Tasha Thomas, contacted Josh Hensley. His account of the events was inconsistent and raised red flags. Initially, he told Tasha that Brooke had gotten a ride home after the party and that he had felt uncomfortable with her presence, but had to leave to tend to the horses. Later, he changed his story, saying that no one had picked her up, but he had heard her mention a party in Rockcastle County. In a subsequent call to Tasha, Hensley expressed fear and provided a new version of events. He claimed that when he returned home, his house was on fire, which he believed was caused by a cigarette Brooke had been smoking on his couch. On June 23, 2013, Brooke's mother filed a missing persons report. The family, desperate for answers, went to Hensley's home to search for clues. They found some of Brooke's personal items on the front porch, including her shoes. Notably absent were her clothing and cell phone. The investigation took another turn on June 25, 2013, when Brooke's phone pinged off a tower in Blue Lick for the last time. This final ping added another layer of mystery to the case, as it contradicted earlier accounts of Brooke's whereabouts. As the investigation continued, suspicion increasingly fell on Josh Hensley. However, it wasn't until August 5, 2020, that Hensley would face legal trouble, though not directly related to Brooke's disappearance. He was arrested on charges of possession of child sexual abuse material, further complicating the already murky waters of this case. Despite extensive searches, interviews, and investigations, Brooklyn Farthing's disappearance remains unsolved. The inconsistencies in Josh Hensley's statements, the mysterious fire, the alarming text messages, and the final cell phone ping all point to a complex and troubling series of events. The impact of Brooke's disappearance on her family and the Berea community has been profound. Her sisters, Tasha and Paige, along with her parents, continue to seek answers and keep Brooke's memory alive. The case has raised awareness about the vulnerabilities young people can face and the importance of personal safety. As we reflect on the disappearance of Brooklyn Farthing, we're left with more questions than answers. What really happened in those early morning hours of June 22, 2013? Who sent that final text message from Brooke's phone? And most importantly, where is Brooklyn Farthing? In the quiet town of Bel Air, Maryland, a community was shaken to its core on August 5, 2023. Rachel Morin, a 37-year-old mother of 5, set out for an evening walk on the Ma and Pa Heritage Trail, a routine she had followed countless times before. But this time, Rachel would not return home. Rachel Morin was born on May 20, 1986, in New Hampshire. Known for her infectious smile and zest for life, she was a devoted mother to her children, Faye, Violet, Octavia, Declan, and Lila. Beyond her role as a mother, Rachel was passionate about fitness, fashion, and travel. She had visited numerous places, including Miami, Aruba, Las Vegas, and various locations in New England. The Ma and Pa Heritage Trail, where Rachel chose to walk that fateful evening, is a 6.25-mile multi-purpose path with varying terrain. Parts of the trail are paved, while others are decked over or wind through wooded areas. It was a popular spot for local residents seeking exercise and fresh air. At 11:23 p.m. on August 5th, Rachel's boyfriend, Richard Tobin, reported her missing to the police. The next day, as an organized search was underway, a citizen made a grim discovery: a woman's body inside a drainage tunnel along the trail. The body was later identified as Rachel Morin. The investigation took a significant turn on August 17, 2023, when investigators found a DNA match after entering male DNA found at the crime scene into the combined DNA index system, CODIS. The match linked the suspect to another crime, a home invasion and assault of a young girl in Los Angeles in March 2023. Doorbell camera footage from the Los Angeles incident showed the suspect leaving the home wearing pants but no shirt. He was described as a Hispanic male in his early to mid-20s, approximately 5'9", tall and weighing about 160 pounds. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement pursued several leads. In October 2023, evidence led investigators to the Washington, D.C. metro area, where they interviewed an individual they deemed relevant to the case. The following month, the Morin family took action, distributing flyers to about 10,000 homes in the Los Angeles region through the U.S. Postal Service's targeted mailing program. The investigation continued to evolve as authorities worked tirelessly to bring Rachel's killer to justice. On November 29, 2023, a significant development occurred when the installation of AI cameras along the Mayenpa hiking trail began. This project, set to be completed by February 2024, aimed to enhance security and potentially prevent future incidents. Meanwhile, former FBI special agent and profiler Tim Papa collaborated with the Morin family to create emotional video content at the MA and PA Trail. Papa's approach, utilizing the meaning-making model and persuasive geography, aimed to give Rachel's loved ones a platform to share their feelings while standing in a location significant to the case. The goal was to create compelling content that could help drive the investigation forward and keep public interest alive. As months passed, the case took an unexpected turn. In June 2024, nearly a year after Rachel's murder, local police and the FBI made a breakthrough. Through DNA evidence and meticulous tracking, they arrested Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The arrest revealed a startling international connection. Martinez Hernandez had allegedly entered the United States illegally from El Salvador the previous year. Even more shocking was the revelation that he was wanted in his home country for the murder of a woman, according to statements from the sheriff and the FBI. Unfortunately, this case is far from over. In the quiet town of Greer, South Carolina, a shocking triple homicide shattered the peace on May 16, 2003. The victims, Sylvia Holtzclaw, a dedicated bank teller, and James and Maggie Barnes, an innocent couple who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their lives were brutally cut short during a brazen daytime robbery at the Blue Ridge Savings Bank. 2 decades later, this cold case continues to haunt the community and baffle investigators. On that fateful Friday afternoon, at approximately 1:30 p.m., a silent alarm was triggered at the Blue Ridge Savings Bank. What unfolded in the next 15 minutes would become one of the most perplexing unsolved crimes in South Carolina's history. Sylvia Holtzclaw, 56, was the sole employee working at the bank that day. Known for her friendly demeanor and meticulous attention to safety procedures, Sylvia had been visited by her son David just 40 minutes before the alarm was activated. He had brought her a sandwich, unaware that it would be their final interaction. James Ebb Barnes and his wife Maggie, both in their 60s, were customers who had the misfortune of entering the bank either shortly before or during the robbery. The couple, respected members of the community, had simply been conducting routine business when they became entangled in the unfolding crime. At 1:45 p.m., when authorities arrived at the scene, they made a grim discovery. The bodies of Sylvia, James, and Maggie were found in a utility room at the back of the bank, each shot execution style with a .40 caliber Glock pistol. The killer or killers had fled, leaving behind a crime scene that would prove frustratingly devoid of clear evidence. Inside the bank, investigators found that cash had been taken from the drawer, but the most crucial piece of evidence, the VHS security tape that should have recorded the entire incident, was missing. The perpetrators had been savvy enough to remove it before their departure, eliminating what could have been the most revealing clue to their identities. The investigation immediately faced significant challenges. The only vehicles in the parking lot belonged to the victims, a white Pontiac and a Ford Ranger pickup truck. This suggested that the perpetrator or perpetrators had likely fled on foot or had a getaway vehicle parked nearby. Investigators turned their attention to security footage from a nearby gas station, which provided a view of the road leading to the bank. This grainy footage revealed a potential lead. A red vehicle, possibly an Oldsmobile Alero or Chevrolet Impala, was seen driving towards the bank shortly before the murders and away from it afterwards. However, the quality of the footage was too poor to discern a license plate or identify any occupants. Greer Police Chief Dean Crisp led the initial investigation, working closely with the FBI due to the nature of the crime. They meticulously combed through the crime scene, collecting what little physical evidence was available. Ballistics tests confirmed that all three victims were killed with the same weapon, a .40 caliber Glock pistol. The timing of the crime raised questions. The bill trap alarm had been triggered at 1:30 p.m., and a call from the security company was quickly answered and disconnected. This suggested that the perpetrators had acted swiftly and with a degree of planning. The fact that they knew to remove the security tape indicated a level of sophistication not typically seen in small-town bank robberies. Investigators interviewed Sylvia's son David, who provided valuable information about his mother's final hours. He confirmed that she had been alone when he visited her at 12:50 p.m. and that a customer had come in for a wire transfer shortly after he left, staying for about 10 minutes. This helped establish a timeline, but also raised the question of whether James and Maggie Barnes had entered the bank before or during the robbery. As the investigation progressed, authorities received hundreds of tips from the public. Each lead was pursued, but none provided the breakthrough needed to crack the case. The lack of eyewitnesses and clear physical evidence made it difficult to identify suspects or establish a concrete theory of the crime. The investigation continued to face obstacles in the months and years that followed. Despite the efforts of local law enforcement and the FBI, no arrests were made. The case garnered significant media attention, both locally and nationally, appearing on true crime shows and podcasts in hopes of generating new leads. One aspect that puzzled investigators was the choice of target. The Blue Ridge Savings Bank was a small, standalone building with minimal security measures. This suggested that the perpetrators might have had inside knowledge or had been observing the bank's operations. However, extensive background checks on employees and regular customers yielded no suspicious connections. The brutality of the crime also stood out. The execution-style killings of not just the bank teller, but also two customers indicated a level of ruthlessness that went beyond a typical bank robbery. This led investigators to consider whether the perpetrators had prior criminal histories or if there was a personal motive involved. In 2013, on the 10th anniversary of the murders, the Greer Police Department and the FBI renewed their appeal to the public for information. They released enhanced images from the gas station security footage, hoping that advancements in technology might help identify the red vehicle or its occupants. However, this effort did not produce any significant leads. The case has had a lasting impact on the community of Greer. The families of Sylvia Holtzclaw and James and Maggie Barnes have continued to advocate for justice, keeping the memory of their loved ones alive through various community initiatives and annual remembrance events. The Blue Ridge Savings Bank murders also led to changes in security protocols for small, standalone banks in the region. Many institutions increased their surveillance capabilities and implemented more stringent safety measures for employees working alone. As the years passed, the case remained a priority for the Greer Police Department. Cold case detectives periodically reviewed the evidence, hoping that new forensic technologies might shed light on previously undetectable clues. DNA analysis techniques, which have advanced significantly since 2003, have been applied to the limited physical evidence from the crime scene, but as of now, no matches have been found in criminal databases. In May 2023, on the 20th anniversary of the murders, the Greer Police Department held a press conference to once again bring attention to the case. They emphasized that the investigation remains active and that they continue to follow up on any new information received. Despite 2 decades of investigation, countless man-hours, and the tireless efforts of law enforcement and the victims' families, the Blue Ridge Savings Bank triple homicide remains unsolved. The identities of those responsible for the murders of Sylvia Holtzclaw, James Barnes, and Maggie Barnes continue to elude investigators. As of 2024, authorities continue to urge anyone with information about the murders to come forward. The Greer Police Department and the FBI maintain that even the smallest detail could be the key to finally bringing closure to this tragic case. In the quiet town of Edwards, Missouri, a mother's disappearance on Mother's Day 2020 would leave her family searching for answers and a community on edge. This is the perplexing case of Ekko Lloyd, a 47-year-old woman who vanished without a trace, leaving behind more questions than clues. Ekko Lloyd was born on May 23, 1972. A mother of 4 grown children, she had recently separated from her husband and was living alone in Edwards. Known for her artistic talents, Ekko was in the process of redecorating her living room when she disappeared. Her relationship with her daughter Kelsey was particularly close, with frequent communication between the two. The last confirmed contact with Ekko was on May 9, 2020, when she spoke with her daughter Kelsey on the phone. The following day, Mother's Day, Kelsey drove to her mother's home to deliver flowers and a card. Upon arrival, she found the house locked and Ekko's car missing from the driveway. Unable to reach her mother, Kelsey left the gifts on the back porch with a note asking Ekko to call her. As days passed without word from Ekko, concern grew. Kelsey's calls to both her mother's cell phone and landline went straight to voicemail. On May 15th, nearly a week after her last visit, Kelsey returned to her mother's house. This time, Ekko's car was in the driveway, but there was still no sign of Ekko herself. Alarmed by the situation, Kelsey checked with neighbors before making the difficult decision to break a window to gain entry to the house. What she found inside only deepened the mystery. The house showed signs of recent occupancy, but not by Ekko. A pile of moldy food and trash was discovered, something entirely out of character for the usually tidy Ekko. In Ekko's bedroom, Kelsey found her mother's cigarettes and lighter on the nightstand, along with her purse containing her wallet, ID, and cash. However, several critical items were missing: Ekko's cell phone, pistol, medications, and car keys. The car itself was locked in the driveway, adding another layer of confusion to the case. The circumstances of Ekko's disappearance immediately raised red flags for her family and law enforcement. The presence of her personal belongings, coupled with the missing items, suggested that Ekko had not left voluntarily. The state of the house, with its uncharacteristic mess, hinted at a potential struggle or the presence of an unknown individual. As the investigation began, authorities faced significant challenges. There were no signs of forced entry prior to Kelsey's arrival, and neighbors reported no unusual activity around Ekko's home. The rural location of Edwards, with a population of just over 1,000, meant fewer potential witnesses and less surveillance footage to review. Investigators conducted extensive searches of the surrounding area, utilizing ground teams, cadaver dogs, and aerial support. Despite these efforts, no trace of Ekko was found. Her bank accounts showed no activity since her disappearance, and her cell phone had either been turned off or the battery had died. The timeline of Ekko's disappearance became a crucial focus for investigators. The last confirmed sighting of Ekko was on May 10, 2020, when a neighbor reported seeing her outside her home. This sighting occurred after Kelsey had left the Mother's Day gifts, suggesting that Ekko had returned home at some point that day. As weeks turned into months, the case gained national attention. Ekko's family, particularly her daughter Kelsey, became vocal advocates, organizing searches and maintaining a social media presence to keep the case in the public eye. They established a Facebook page called Bring Ekko Home, which served as a hub for updates and community support. The investigation into Ekko's disappearance took a significant turn when authorities began to focus on her relationships and recent interactions. They learned that Ekko had recently befriended a neighbor, which her family found unusual given her typically private nature. This new acquaintance became a person of interest, though no formal charges were ever filed. As the case progressed, law enforcement faced mounting pressure to produce results. They executed multiple search warrants on properties in the area, including Ekko's home and surrounding lands. These searches yielded some items of interest, but authorities remained tight-lipped about the specifics to protect the integrity of the investigation. In December 2020, Ekko's family increased the reward for information, leading to her whereabouts to $7,000, hoping to incentivize anyone with knowledge to come forward. This move generated new tips, but none provided the breakthrough investigators were seeking. As of 2024, nearly 4 years after Ekko's disappearance, the case remains unsolved. Despite the passage of time, law enforcement maintains that the investigation is active and ongoing. The vanishing of Troy Galloway. On a cold January night in 2016, a Marine Corps veteran walked out of his home in Sonora, California, and seemingly vanished into thin air. Troy Galloway, 34 years old at the time, left his residence in the Crystal Falls Ranch subdivision following an argument with his wife. What should have been a temporary absence to cool off turned into a perplexing mystery that continues to baffle investigators and haunt his family to this day. Troy Galloway was not just another statistic. He was a father, a husband, and a son. Having served in the United States Marine Corps from 2000 to 2003, Troy had returned to civilian life and was living with his family in Tuolumne County. The area, known for its rugged terrain and proximity to Yosemite National Park, would become the backdrop for one of the region's most puzzling disappearances. On the evening of January 13, 2016, tensions rose in the Galloway household. Troy and his wife Kelsey had an argument, the details of which remain private. What is known is that at approximately 10 p.m., Troy left the house on foot, wearing only a short-sleeved t-shirt despite the winter chill. This decision, seemingly impulsive, would mark the last confirmed sighting of Troy Galloway. The initial hours after Troy's departure didn't immediately raise alarms. However, a crucial detail soon emerged that would perplex investigators. Merely 30 minutes after leaving the house, Troy's cell phone was turned off. This action, whether deliberate or not, effectively cut off the most direct means of contacting him and would later hinder efforts to locate his whereabouts. As hours turned into days, concern grew. Troy's mother, Nancy Galloway, reported her son missing, initiating a search that would span years and involve multiple agencies. The Tuolumne County Sheriff's Office took the lead, but they faced significant challenges from the outset. The rugged terrain of the Crystal Falls area, combined with the cold January weather, complicated search efforts. In the months that followed, investigators pursued various leads and theories. Was Troy's disappearance voluntary? Had he met with foul play? Or had he succumbed to the elements in a tragic accident? Each possibility was explored, but concrete evidence remained elusive. A significant development came in September 2016, when a tip led authorities to search a lake within the Crystal Falls subdivision. This operation, involving divers and specialized equipment, yielded no trace of Troy. However, it underscored the community's ongoing commitment to finding answers. As the case stretched into its 5th year, law enforcement decided to take an unprecedented step. In the early summer of 2021, the Tuolumne County Sheriff's Office, in cooperation with other agencies, undertook the monumental task of draining Lower Crystal Falls Lake. This extensive operation, lasting several weeks, was a testament to the authorities' determination to leave no stone unturned in their search for Troy. The draining of the lake captured public attention and reignited interest in the case. For Troy's family, it represented a glimmer of hope, a chance for closure after years of uncertainty. However, as the waters receded and the lake bed was meticulously searched, that hope turned to disappointment. No evidence related to Troy's disappearance was found. This outcome, while disheartening, only deepened the mystery surrounding Troy's vanishing. How could a man simply disappear without a trace in a relatively small community? The lack of physical evidence, no body, no personal effects, no signs of struggle, has left investigators with more questions than answers. Throughout the years, Troy's family, particularly his mother Nancy, has been a driving force in keeping his case alive. They've utilized social media, worked with missing persons organizations, and cooperated closely with law enforcement. Their efforts have ensured that Troy's disappearance remains in the public consciousness, preventing it from becoming just another cold case file. As of 2024, the disappearance of Troy Galloway remains unsolved. In the sweltering heat of an Indiana summer, a young woman's disappearance would leave her family and an entire community searching for answers. This is the story of Andy Wagner, a 24-year-old from Evansville, Indiana, who vanished without a trace on August 6, 2022. Andy was known for her kind heart and compassion, particularly towards the elderly and those with special needs. Her mother, Elaine Garcia, recalls a Halloween when young Andy, having run out of candy at their house, gave trick-or-treaters sweets from her own bag. It was this generous spirit that endeared her to many. At the time of her disappearance, Andy was struggling with addiction. However, she had plans to turn her life around. Her mother was coming to town for her sister's 21st birthday, and they had made arrangements for Andy to move to Texas with her, a fresh start and a chance at recovery. On August 6, 2022, Andy briefly returned home to pack some belongings. Her sister saw her for about 10 minutes, but Andy didn't disclose where she was heading. Given her recent habits of being away from home, her family didn't immediately suspect anything was amiss. Andy sent a text message to her family later that day. This would be the last time they heard from her. The last confirmed sighting of Andy was approximately 40 minutes away in Oakland City, Indiana. As days passed without any communication, alarm bells began to ring. It was highly unusual for Andy to go this long without contacting her family. On August 12th, 6 days after she was last seen, her family reported her missing to the Evansville Police Department. The investigation into Andy's disappearance took an unexpected turn when a tip suggested she might be a victim of sex trafficking. This information prompted the involvement of the FBI. However, according to Andy's family, the federal agency's participation has been minimal since their initial engagement. Elaine began coordinating her own searches, rallying community members and volunteers to comb through areas where Andy might have been. These efforts not only served as a practical means of searching for clues, but also kept Andy's case in the public eye. The family's struggle was compounded by the limited media attention the case received. In an age where missing persons cases often capture national headlines, Andy's disappearance remained largely a local concern. This lack of widespread coverage potentially hampered efforts to gather new leads or information from a broader audience. As the one-year mark of Andy's disappearance approached, her family's determination remained unshaken. On July 24, 2023, nearly a year after Andy vanished, friends and family gathered for another search effort. These events served a dual purpose: to continue the physical search for any signs of Andy and to ensure that her case wasn't forgotten. The family's perseverance paid off to some extent when, in January 2024, a $5,000 reward was offered for information leading to Andy's whereabouts. This development brought a renewed focus to the case and sparked hope that someone might come forward with crucial information. However, the investigation took a dramatic turn on May 7, 2024. The FBI became involved in a criminal investigation at a home in Oakland City, the same town where Andy was last seen. While authorities did not explicitly link this investigation to Andy's case, the timing and location raised questions and renewed interest in her disappearance. The Oakland City investigation led to a series of searches at 3 different locations, as reported by the Evansville Police Department on May 8, 2024. Evidence was collected, but authorities remained tight-lipped about the nature of the findings or their potential connection to Andy's case. This development, while promising, also highlighted the slow pace of progress in the nearly 2-year-old investigation. As the community continued to grapple with Andy's disappearance, another significant event occurred. On May 20th, 2024, an arrest was made at Bally's Hotel and Casino in Evansville. While details were initially scarce, the Courier-Journal reported that this arrest could have broader implications. Speculation grew about whether this incident was related to Andy's case, but officials refrained from making any direct connections public. Throughout this period, Andy's family faced another heartbreaking challenge. Elaine Garcia, Andy's mother and tireless advocate, passed away on December 23, 2023. Her death was a devastating blow to the search efforts, but it also galvanized the community's resolve to find answers. Andy's sister, Alex Wagner, took up the mantle, continuing the fight to uncover the truth about her sister's disappearance. In the quiet town of Muskogee, Oklahoma, a young woman's disappearance would leave her family and friends searching for answers for years to come. Christen Richardson, known to many as Crash, for her love of drumming, vanished on May 25, 2018. What began as excitement for an upcoming music festival quickly turned into a perplexing mystery that continues to baffle investigators to this day. Christen, 29 years old at the time of her disappearance, was known for her generous spirit and passion for music. Friends described her as someone who would go out of her way to help others, a quality that some fear may have played a role in her fate. She lived with two roommates, Carl Bryce and Cody Ray Campbell, in a house where she also cared for her beloved dog, Buddy. The day Christen went missing was supposed to be the start of an exciting weekend. Rocklahoma, an annual multi-day music festival in Pryor, Oklahoma, was set to begin, and Christen's favorite band, Hailstorm, was scheduled to perform. She had made plans to borrow camping gear from a longtime family friend before heading to the festival. But Christen never arrived to pick up the sleeping bag and tent. She never made it to Rocklahoma. In fact, no one outside of her roommates reported seeing her that day. The last confirmed sighting of Christen was at her home in Muskogee. As days passed without word from Christen, her family and friends grew increasingly concerned. It was entirely out of character for her to disappear without notice, especially given her close bond with her dog and her tight-knit relationships with family and friends. The investigation into Christen's disappearance quickly revealed troubling inconsistencies. Carl Bryce, one of Christen's roommates, claimed that he and Christen had gone to Rocklahoma together and that she had left the festival with an unknown female. However, cell tower data told a different story. Christen's phone had never left the vicinity of her home in Muskogee, directly contradicting Bryce's account. As detectives dug deeper, more red flags emerged. Both Bryce and Campbell, Christen's roommates, had engaged in suspicious behavior in the days following her disappearance. Before Christen was even reported missing, the two men had sold and given away some of her belongings. Additionally, Bryce was caught using Christen's Oklahoma access card after she had vanished. Perhaps most alarming were the alleged statements made by Cody Ray Campbell. According to reports, Campbell had told people that he was involved in Christen's death. These claims, combined with the other suspicious activities, led investigators to briefly hold both Bryce and Campbell as material witnesses in the case. The investigation took another turn when a stolen truck was discovered at Christen's residence. This discovery led to charges against Carl Bryce in connection with the vehicle theft. Meanwhile, Cody Ray Campbell faced legal troubles of his own, eventually being sentenced on theft charges, though it's unclear if these were directly related to Christen's case. The lack of physical evidence in Christen's case presented significant challenges for investigators. Without a body or a crime scene, piecing together what happened to her proved to be an uphill battle. Detectives continued to interview friends, family, and acquaintances, hoping to uncover new information that might shed light on her disappearance. In November 2019, over a year after Christen vanished, a glimmer of hope emerged. Law enforcement executed a search warrant on county property in connection with the case. While the details of what prompted this search were not made public, it signaled that the investigation was still active and that authorities had not given up on finding answers for Christen's family. As the second anniversary of Christen's disappearance approached in May 2020, her loved ones organized renewed search efforts and awareness campaigns. They distributed flyers, held vigils, and utilized social media to keep Christen's case in the public eye. Her sister, in particular, became a vocal advocate, tirelessly working to ensure that Christen's story was not forgotten. As the investigation continued, authorities faced the daunting task of separating fact from fiction. The conflicting stories provided by Christen's roommates, the alleged confessions, and the suspicious behavior surrounding her disappearance all pointed to foul play. However, without concrete evidence, building a case strong enough for prosecution remained elusive. In the years since Christen vanished, technological advancements have offered new avenues for investigation. Detectives have revisited old evidence, applying new forensic techniques in hopes of uncovering previously overlooked clues. They've also continued to monitor social media and online activity, knowing that even the smallest piece of information could potentially break the case wide open. As of 2023, more than 5 years after Christen Richardson disappeared, her case remains unsolved. The Muskogee Police Department continues to classify it as an active investigation, following up on any new leads that emerge. Christen's family, friends, and supporters refuse to give up hope, believing that someday they will uncover the truth about what happened to her. In the early hours of July 5, 2001, a 20-year-old woman named Crystal Ann Arensdorf vanished without a trace from a bar in Dubuque, Iowa. What began as a night of Independence Day celebrations would turn into a decades-long mystery that continues to haunt her family and baffle investigators to this day. Crystal was last seen around 2 a.m. at Nicker's Saloon in downtown Dubuque. She had spent the evening watching fireworks with her sister Jennifer before heading to the bar to meet friends. Crystal made plans with a bartender to share a cab after his shift ended at 2:30 a.m. But when he finished work, Crystal was nowhere to be found. Her keys and money were left behind at the bar. The following morning, Jennifer became worried when Crystal didn't come to pick up her car. The family attempted to report Crystal missing, but were told they had to wait 24 hours to file an official report. In the meantime, they began going door to door, asking if anyone had seen or heard from Crystal. Authorities launched extensive searches. They combed through areas surrounding Leisure Lake in Iowa, searched bodies of water, land, garages, and basements. Cadaver dogs were brought in to assist, but no trace of Crystal was found. In October 2001, Crystal's boyfriend Tim was cleared as a suspect. However, the investigation soon focused on two brothers, Stephen and David Peacock, who had been at Nicker's Saloon the night Crystal disappeared. In April 2002, both men were interviewed, questioned, and given polygraph examinations. David's car was also searched, though the results were not made public. The case went cold for years until July 2015, when the Iowa Cold Cases website received an anonymous tip. The tipster claimed David Peacock had borrowed his sister's car on the night Crystal vanished and provided current aliases and employer information for both David and Stephen Peacock. In 2020, nearly 2 decades after Crystal's disappearance, special agents with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation and the FBI conducted a new search of Nicker's Saloon. The results of this search have not been disclosed. Today, 21 years after she was last seen, Crystal Arensdorf remains missing. Authorities maintain they are confident the case can eventually be solved. A combined $12,500 reward is offered for information leading to a resolution. Crystal was described as a 20-year-old Caucasian woman, 5'6", tall, 115 pounds, with strawberry blonde hair and brown eyes. She had double piercings in each ear and a mole near her navel. The disappearance of Crystal Arensdorf remains one of Iowa's most perplexing cold cases. As leads continue to be pursued, her family holds out hope that someday they will finally learn what happened to Crystal on that July night in 2001. The focus on brothers Stephen and David Peacock intensified in 2002. Both men were known to have been at Nicker's saloon on July 4th, but their exact interactions with Crystal remained unclear. The polygraph examinations they underwent were inconclusive, leaving investigators without the breakthrough they had hoped for. The 2015 tip to Iowa cold cases about David Peacock borrowing his sister's car reignited interest in the brothers' potential involvement. Investigators followed up on this lead, but the results of their inquiries were not made public. The Peacock brothers remained persons of interest, though never officially named as suspects. The 2020 search of Nicker's saloon by state and federal agents marked a significant development. Using advanced forensic techniques unavailable in 2001, investigators hoped to uncover new evidence. While the full results of this search were not disclosed, it demonstrated that law enforcement had not given up on solving Crystal's case. Throughout the years, Crystal's family has remained active in keeping her case in the public eye. They've organized vigils, distributed flyers, and worked with missing persons organizations to ensure Crystal is not forgotten. Her mother, Barb Beam, and siblings Michael and Jennifer have given numerous interviews, always emphasizing Crystal's kind nature and the void left by her absence. She had a legacy, and she was only just getting started with life. I mean, she was 20 years old. Michael Beam, Crystal's brother, told reporters on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance. The impact of Crystal's case extended beyond her immediate family. It led to discussions in Dubuque about improving safety measures in the downtown bar district and prompted local law enforcement to reevaluate their procedures for handling missing persons reports. As the investigation entered its third decade, investigators continued to pursue every available lead. In 2021, on the 20th anniversary of Crystal's disappearance, the Dubuque Police Department reiterated their commitment to solving the case. We're pretty confident that we'll be able to at some point, maybe not us, but at some point, we're very confident that this can get solved, said David Randall, a Dubuque Police Department investigator. The department's approach to the case has evolved over the years. Advances in DNA technology and forensic science have allowed for the re-examination of evidence collected in 2001. Additionally, the proliferation of social media and online databases has expanded the reach of public appeals for information. In 2022, investigators revisited the statements of witnesses from Nicker's saloon, hoping that the passage of time might have loosened tongues or jogged memories. They also conducted new interviews with Stephen and David Peacock, approaching them as potential witnesses rather than suspects in hopes of gleaning new information. Back then, they were talked to as suspects, investigator Randall explained. I think when you're talked to as a suspect, rather than a witness, then maybe you don't give as much information. It doesn't mean you're not a suspect. They're definitely people we still want to talk to, and maybe they have some information yet to give that they didn't have in the original investigation. Despite these efforts, no significant breakthroughs have been publicly announced. The case continues to be a source of frustration and heartache for Crystal's family and the Dubuque community. Crystal's disappearance has had lasting effects on those who knew her. Her childhood friend, Dawn Walsh, remembers Crystal's kindness and infectious smile. She was kind. Even if you did something that could be upsetting, she never really said bad things about people. She just generally was a kind person, loved kids, genuinely just sweet, beautiful. Her smile was infectious, and we would just lay there and laugh for hours. As of 2024, the case of Crystal Ann Arensdorf remains unsolved. Her disappearance continues to be actively investigated by the Dubuque Police Department, with assistance from state and federal agencies. The combined $12,500 reward for information leading to a resolution in Crystal's case remains unclaimed. In the early morning hours of June 15, 2013, a vibrant 19-year-old college student named Adrienne Selenas vanished without a trace in Tempe, Arizona. What began as a typical summer night out with friends would spiral into a perplexing mystery that continues to baffle investigators to this day. Adrienne was a bright, ambitious young woman studying at Gateway Community College in Maricopa County. She dreamed of becoming a journalist and was known for her intelligence and motivation. With a distinctive sun tattoo below her left ear and a clear stoned lip piercing, Adrienne had a unique style that matched her vivacious personality. On the evening of June 14th, Adrienne and her roommates hosted a party at their apartment near West 5th Street and South Hardy Drive. As the night wore on, Adrienne and her longtime boyfriend, Francisco Arteaga, whom she had known since 8th grade, got into an argument. Around 2:30 a.m., the couple left the party to talk things over at Francisco's apartment in Scottsdale. According to Francisco, Adrienne decided not to stay overnight, so he drove her back to her own apartment around 3 a.m. This would be the last time Francisco would see his girlfriend alive. The events that unfolded in the next few hours would prove crucial to the investigation. Shortly before 4 a.m., one of Adrienne's roommates saw her leaving their apartment again, this time with an overnight bag. It appeared Adrienne had changed her mind and was planning to return to Francisco's apartment. At approximately 3:45 a.m., Tempe police received a call reporting a car accident near Ash Avenue and Rio Salado Parkway. The caller stated that a vehicle had hit a median, popping 2 tires, and was attempting to leave the scene. Police would later confirm that the abandoned car belonged to Adrienne Selenas. Phone records show that between 4:10 a.m. and 4:45 a.m., Adrienne called Francisco 11 times and sent a text message indicating she was on her way to his apartment. At 4:53 a.m., Adrienne spoke with a cab driver, arranging for a pickup at a nearby AM/PM convenience store at the corner of Hardy and University Drives. This is where the trail goes cold. When the cab driver arrived at the designated pickup location, Adrienne was nowhere to be found. Attempts to reach her by phone were futile. Her cell phone had been turned off at 5:07 a.m. Adrienne Selenas had vanished in the span of just 14 minutes, leaving investigators with a baffling timeline and more questions than answers. The disappearance of Adrienne Selenas quickly became a high-priority case for the Tempe Police Department. As Father's Day approached on June 16th, Adrienne's father, Rick Selenas, grew increasingly concerned when he didn't hear from his daughter. They had planned to spend the day together, and her silence was uncharacteristic. Rick reported Adrienne missing, setting off an intensive search effort. Investigators began by thoroughly canvassing Adrienne's neighborhood and interviewing those closest to her. They questioned Francisco Arteaga and the cab driver who was supposed to pick Adrienne up, but both were eventually cleared of suspicion. The police even searched nearby Tempe Town Lake, but these initial efforts yielded no significant leads or suspects. As days turned into weeks, the case garnered national attention. The FBI joined the investigation, offering additional resources and expertise. A $20,000 reward was established for information leading to Adrienne's whereabouts or the arrest of those responsible for her disappearance. Despite the increased attention and resources, the case remained frustratingly cold until August 6, 2013, nearly 2 months after Adrienne vanished. On that day, a man reported finding human remains on his property near Apache Junction, Arizona, approximately 30 miles east of Tempe. The discovery was prompted by an unusual gathering of vultures in the area. Investigators rushed to the scene, hoping for a breakthrough but dreading the possibility of a tragic outcome. The remains were in an advanced state of decomposition, having been exposed to the harsh desert environment for weeks. The location was a remote desert wash basin, an area prone to flash flooding during monsoon season. On August 15, 2013, DNA analysis confirmed what many had feared. The remains were those of Adrienne Selenas. The discovery shifted the focus of the investigation from a missing person case to a potential homicide. However, the autopsy results were frustratingly inconclusive. The medical examiner's report listed both the manner and cause of death as undetermined, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. The condition and location of Adrienne's remains presented new challenges for the investigation. Police believed that her body had likely been dumped in a different location and washed to the discovery site by recent rainstorms. This theory complicated efforts to pinpoint where and how Adrienne had died, as well as the movements of her potential killer. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they began to piece together a timeline of Adrienne's final known movements. The 14-minute window between her last phone call and her failure to meet the cab became the focal point of the investigation. What happened during those crucial minutes that led to Adrienne's disappearance and ultimate death? Detectives retraced Adrienne's steps, examining surveillance footage from businesses along her expected route to the AM/PM convenience store. They interviewed residents in the area, hoping someone might have seen or heard something unusual in the early morning hours of June 15th. Despite these efforts, no eyewitnesses came forward with information about Adrienne's movements after she left her apartment. The investigation also focused on Adrienne's cell phone, which had inexplicably been turned off at 5:07 a.m. Attempts to locate the device proved fruitless, leaving investigators without a crucial piece of potential evidence. The missing phone could have provided valuable data about Adrienne's location and communications in her final hours. As months passed, investigators pursued various leads and theories. They looked into Adrienne's personal life, examining her relationships and any potential conflicts. They also considered the possibility that Adrienne had been the victim of a random act of violence or abduction. Each lead was meticulously followed, but none provided the breakthrough needed to solve the case. One person of interest who emerged during the investigation was Thomas Simon Jr., a local man who had allegedly made suspicious comments about Adrienne's disappearance. However, despite extensive questioning and investigation, no concrete evidence linked Simon to the crime, and he was never charged. The case took an unexpected turn when Brian Patrick Miller, known as the Zombie Hunter due to his elaborate costume and modified car, was arrested in 2015 for 2 other murders in the Phoenix area. Given the similarities in the cases, investigators looked into possible connections between Miller and Adrienne's disappearance. However, no definitive link was established, and Miller was not charged in relation to Adrienne's case. As years passed, Adrienne's family and friends continued to seek justice and closure. They organized vigils, maintained social media pages dedicated to the case, and worked tirelessly to keep Adrienne's story in the public eye. The Tempe Police Department and FBI maintained the case as an active investigation, periodically reviewing evidence and following up on new leads as they emerged. Despite these ongoing efforts, the case of Adrienne Selenas remains unsolved to this day. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance and death continue to puzzle investigators and haunt her loved ones. The classification of her case as a suspicious death, rather than a confirmed homicide, adds another layer of complexity to the investigation. As of 2024, more than a decade after Adrienne's disappearance, no arrests have been made and no suspects have been officially named in connection with her death. The $20,000 reward for information leading to the resolution of the case remains unclaimed. The unsolved nature of Adrienne's case serves as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by law enforcement in cold cases. It also underscores the enduring pain experienced by families of victims in unresolved crimes. Adrienne Selenas, a young woman full of promise and ambition, vanished in the span of 14 minutes, leaving behind a mystery that continues to defy explanation. In the quiet town of Waitsfield, Vermont, a mystery has haunted residents for over 15 years. On October 15, 2006, 34-year-old Donald Messier vanished without a trace after leaving a house party in the early morning hours. What makes this case particularly baffling is that Messier's bright red 1997 Ford F-150 truck also disappeared, leaving investigators and loved ones searching for answers. Donald Messier, known affectionately as Donnie to friends and family, was a beloved figure in his community. A native of nearby Waterbury, Donnie was described as a gentle giant with a heart of gold. Standing at an imposing height, he sported a mustache and goatee, with a small birthmark on his neck and surgical scars on both wrists from carpal tunnel surgery. At the time of his disappearance, Donnie was going through a difficult period in his life. Recently divorced, he had moved in with his sister, Amy Currier, and her family. Despite this personal setback, those close to him say he was showing signs of moving past his depression. Donnie was a hard worker, holding down 2 jobs, working the night shift at the Green Mountain Coffee Roaster plant and part-time at Billings Mobil gas station, both in Waterbury. The events leading up to Donnie's disappearance seemed ordinary enough. On Saturday, October 14th, he worked his shift at Billings Mobil until 3 p.m. After work, he spent time at his grandfather's shop doing brake work. In the early evening, Donnie watched a NASCAR race with a friend in Duxbury before heading to a gathering in Waitsfield. It was at this party where Donnie was last seen. Witnesses report that he left the gathering sometime between 12:30 and 2 a.m. on Sunday, October 15th. No one reported anything unusual about his behavior or demeanor. He did not appear intoxicated, nor did he leave with anyone. This is where the trail goes cold. When Donnie failed to return home after the party, his sister Amy wasn't immediately alarmed. She knew he had plans with a friend on Sunday. However, concern grew when he didn't show up for his night shift at the coffee plant on Monday, and there was no sign he had been home since Saturday. Attempts to reach him by cell phone went unanswered, with calls eventually going straight to voicemail. On October 18th, 3 days after Donnie was last seen, his family reported him missing to the Waterbury Police Department. The case was quickly transferred to the Vermont State Police, who issued a public alert that same day. In early November, authorities released a follow-up notice appealing to hikers and hunters to be on the lookout for Donnie's distinctive vehicle, a red 1997 Ford F-150 pickup with Vermont license plate BGG 890, dual exhaust, a moon visor, a black tonneau cover, and NASCAR sticker numbers 27, 07, and 08 displayed in the rear window. The investigation faced immediate challenges. Despite extensive searches, including efforts at the Waterbury Reservoir and granite quarries in Bar, no trace of Donnie or his truck was found. Police monitored his financial accounts and phone records, but there was no activity after his last known phone call to a friend at 1:30 a.m. on October 15th, shortly after leaving the party. Investigators interviewed the party hosts and attendees, but a puzzling silence seemed to descend over the tight-knit Waitsfield community. With approximately 50-60 people at the gathering, it was surprising that no one could provide substantial leads. Even more perplexing was the reported lack of participation by party attendees in subsequent search efforts, which stood in stark contrast to the enthusiastic involvement of Donnie's other friends. As the investigation progressed, two primary theories emerged. The first suggested that Donnie, despondent over his recent divorce, may have died by suicide. However, this theory failed to account for the missing truck. The second hypothesis proposed that Donnie might have swerved to avoid an animal while driving, resulting in an accident that remained undiscovered. Yet this scenario seemed increasingly unlikely as years passed without any discovery, even after significant landscape disruptions caused by events like Hurricane Irene in 2011. As time passed, rumors and alternative theories began to circulate. Donnie's close friend Chris, who didn't attend the party, suggested in an interview with the Vanished podcast that something may have happened at the gathering. There were whispers of a potential altercation over a love triangle and unsubstantiated rumors about drugs and guns. However, those who knew Donnie insisted that the hardest substance he ever used was beer. More sinister theories emerged, including speculation that Donnie was killed at the party, his body burned, and his truck buried. Despite these rumors, law enforcement maintained that they lacked sufficient evidence to confirm or deny any particular theory. Lieutenant John McCallum of the Vermont State Police stated, "We don't know what happened to him. We don't have information to say he was a victim of harm or to say that any other possible theory is valid. Evidence is all still lacking." For over 15 years, Donnie's family waited for answers. In October 2021, they received assistance from Adventures with Purpose, an Oregon-based organization specializing in underwater searches for missing persons. The team conducted a thorough search of the Waterbury Reservoir, but their efforts yielded no results. However, a breakthrough finally came in October 2022, nearly 16 years after Donnie's disappearance. Upon the request of one of Donnie's co-workers, Adventures with Purpose returned to the area to search additional bodies of water. On October 4th, just days after what would have been Donnie's 50th birthday, the team made a startling discovery. Using sonar equipment, they identified an object submerged in approximately 10 feet of water in the Winooski River in Duxbury, near the Duxbury Community Gardens. Upon closer inspection, divers confirmed that the object was indeed Donnie's missing red Ford F-150. The Vermont State Police scuba team and crime scene search team took over the recovery efforts. During the extraction process, which didn't go smoothly, the truck flipped over, potentially compromising some evidence. Personal effects were recovered, including a watch, a jacket, and a pair of glasses, but no human remains were found. In the weeks following the truck's discovery, volunteers searched along the river, retrieving various items including CDs, clothing, bone fragments of unknown origin, and a rifle. All evidence was turned over to the Vermont State Police for further analysis. Despite this significant development, the case of Donald Messier remains officially unsolved. The discovery of his truck has provided some answers, but has also raised new questions. Investigators have not been able to confirm whether Donnie was in the vehicle when it entered the river, and the circumstances surrounding how the truck ended up in the water remain unclear. As of now, Donald Messia's disappearance continues to be an active missing person case. The recovery of his truck after 16 years has reignited interest in the investigation, but the ultimate fate of Donnie himself remains a mystery. His family, friends, and the community of Waitsfield continue to seek closure, hoping that further analysis of the recovered evidence might finally reveal what happened to Donald Messia on that October night in 2006. In the bustling city of Los Angeles, a devoted mother's sudden disappearance sent shockwaves through her community and left investigators grappling with a perplexing mystery. Heidi Plank, a 39-year-old financial controller, vanished without a trace on October 17, 2021, leaving behind her 10-year-old son and a trail of unanswered questions. The day Heidi disappeared began like any other Sunday. She attended her son's football game in Downey, a city in Los Angeles County. However, her ex-husband, Jim Wayne, noticed something was amiss. Heidi appeared unusually anxious and left the game at halftime. This would be the last time Jim or their son would see her. Later that evening, at approximately 6:30 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Heidi walking her dog, Seven, in downtown Los Angeles near the intersection of Hope and Flower Streets. This seemingly mundane act would become a crucial piece of evidence in the investigation that followed. Roughly 30 minutes after the surveillance footage was recorded, Heidi's dog was found wandering alone inside a high-end apartment complex known as Hope Plus Flower. The discovery of Seven without his owner raised immediate concerns, but it would take several more days before the full gravity of the situation became apparent. Between Sunday, October 17th, and Wednesday, October 20th, friends and family attempted to contact Heidi multiple times. Their calls and text messages went unanswered, an unusual occurrence for the typically responsive mother. While initially more annoyed than worried, alarm bells began to ring when Heidi failed to pick up her son from school on October 20th. Jim Wayne, recognizing the severity of the situation, filed a missing persons report with the Los Angeles Police Department that same day. As investigators began to piece together Heidi's last known movements, they encountered their first significant obstacle. Attempts to access the GPS in Heidi's car and the location services for her Apple devices proved fruitless. All had been disabled. The investigation took a crucial turn when Jim Wayne attempted to track Seven through his microchip. This led to the discovery that on the night of October 17th, a resident of the Hope Plus Flower apartment complex had found the dog wandering on one of the upper floors. The resident had alerted the chip company, providing investigators with their first solid lead. Armed with this information, law enforcement obtained surveillance footage from Hope Plus Flower. The video revealed Heidi entering the building on the evening of her disappearance, but crucially, there was no footage of her leaving. This led investigators to believe that Heidi may have attended a party at the complex that night. As the search for Heidi intensified, the LAPD conducted a wellness check at her home. They found the residence in pristine condition, but notably, Heidi's phone and laptops were left behind. This discovery only deepened the mystery surrounding her disappearance. The investigation took a grim turn when forensic evidence recovered at Hope Plus Flower prompted a weeks-long search of the Chiquita Canyon landfill. The working theory was that something may have happened to Heidi at the party, and her body could have been disposed of via a trash chute that emptied into a dumpster. Despite extensive efforts, the search yielded no trace of Heidi. One line of inquiry focused on Heidi's employer, Camden Capital Partners. Jason Sugarman, a managing partner at the firm, had been accused by the Securities and Exchange Commission of defrauding a Native American tribe's pension funds out of $43 million. While no direct connection has been established between this case and Heidi's disappearance, it remains an avenue of investigation. As the investigation continued, detectives meticulously combed through Heidi's personal and professional life, seeking any clues that might shed light on her disappearance. They interviewed colleagues, friends, and acquaintances, trying to piece together Heidi's final days and hours. The LAPD's Missing Persons Unit, led by Detective Merrill, worked tirelessly to follow up on every lead. They retraced Heidi's steps, analyzed cell phone records, and scrutinized financial transactions. Despite their efforts, no significant breakthroughs emerged. 6 months after Heidi's disappearance, law enforcement held a press conference to update the public and appeal for new information. Detective Merrill stated, "We're committed to finding Heidi and bringing closure to her family. We urge anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to come forward." Jim Wayne, Heidi's ex-husband, has remained a vocal advocate for the search efforts. He's organized community searches, distributed flyers, and maintained an active social media presence to keep Heidi's case in the public eye. "Our son asks about his mother every day," Jim shared in a televised interview. "We won't give up until we have answers." As of today, Heidi Plank remains missing. She is described as 5'3", weighing 120 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she was last seen wearing jeans and a grey sweater, driving a 2017 grey Range Rover with California license plate U840X0. The circumstances surrounding Heidi's disappearance continue to baffle investigators. The seemingly ordinary Sunday that began with a football game ended in a perplexing mystery that has left a family in anguish and a community searching for answers. For now, these questions remain unanswered. But for Heidi's family, friends, and the dedicated investigators working on her case, the search for truth continues. They hold on to hope that one day the mystery of what happened to Heidi Plank will be solved, bringing long-awaited answers and closure to those who loved her. On the morning of October 13, 2018, 16-year-old Cari Gus vanished from her home in Chalfont, California, a small rural community in Mono County. What began as a typical Friday night for a teenager would spiral into a perplexing mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Cari lived with her father, Cari Gus, stepmother, Melissa Gus, and 2 younger brothers in a quiet neighborhood. By all accounts, Cari was close with her family, particularly doting on her brothers. However, in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, friends reported that Cari had been experiencing episodes of paranoia, convinced someone was tracking her phone. On the evening of October 12th, Cari asked permission to attend her high school's football game. Her parents agreed, unaware that Cari actually planned to skip the game and attend a party with her boyfriend, Donald. This decision would set in motion a chain of events that culminated in Cari's disappearance. At the party, Cari smoked marijuana. Her reaction was severe and immediate. Donald Arrowood III, Cari's boyfriend, later told investigators that Cari became intensely paranoid, frightened by the music and even his presence. In a state of panic, Cari fled from Donald, running down the street in darkness. At 8:45 p.m., Cari called her stepmother, Melissa, frantically asking to be picked up. When Melissa arrived, she found Cari pale and disoriented, her pupils severely dilated. The short drive home did little to calm Cari's agitated state. She jumped between seats, expressing fear that the car would harm her. Once home, Cari's erratic behavior continued well into the night. Family members describe her alternating between huddling fearfully in corners and seeking comfort from her parents. She expressed a desire to read the Bible, paint her nails, and color, activities jarringly at odds with her apparent distress. At approximately 10 p.m., Melissa made the decision to secretly record Cari's behavior on her cell phone. Her intention was to show Cari the footage the next day as a cautionary lesson about substance use. These recordings would later become crucial evidence, providing insight into Cari's mental state in her final documented hours. In one 8-minute 45-second recording reviewed by Fox News, Cari's voice is described as shaky and filled with anguish. She expresses fear of sleeping and repeatedly apologizes. At one point, she asks if Melissa is going to call 911 and questions whether she'll live until tomorrow. Despite reassurances, Cari's paranoia persists, even leading her to voice a fear that Melissa might kill her. Throughout the night, Cari engaged in writing on what the family believes was a therapy homework sheet. This continued for hours, possibly as a self-soothing mechanism. Melissa stayed with Cari until after 3 a.m. when the teenager finally seemed to settle down. Melissa checked on Cari and her other children a few times before going to sleep herself. The next morning, between 7:15 and 7:30 a.m., Melissa awoke to find Cari gone. The front door was ajar, and Cari's cell phone was left behind on the kitchen island. Alarmed, Melissa woke Zachary, and the two immediately set out in their car to search for Cari. While driving, Zachary called Cari's biological mother, Lindsay Fairley, to inform her of the situation. He then contacted the Mono County Sheriff's Department to report Cari as missing. In the hours that followed, a few key witnesses came forward with potential sightings of Cari. Kenneth Dutton, a neighbor who knew Cari, reported seeing her walking through the neighborhood that Saturday morning. He specifically noted that she was carrying a piece of paper. Another neighbor, Richard Eddy, reported seeing a thin female with long hair walking past his house, also holding a piece of paper. He described her behavior as unusual, noting that she was looking up around at the sky. The final reported sighting came from a local resident described as a wooder, who claimed to have seen a girl matching Cari's description near Highway 6. This 2-lane route runs toward Bishop, but also leads north into some of Nevada's most desolate desert areas, significantly expanding the potential search area. The piece of paper mentioned by multiple witnesses is of particular interest to investigators. It's speculated that this could be the same therapy homework sheet Cari had been writing on during her distressed state the night before. However, this paper has never been recovered, leaving its contents a mystery. Despite extensive searches of the area and numerous tips, no trace of Cari has ever been found. The investigation has been hampered by the vast, rugged terrain surrounding Chalfont and the lack of concrete evidence beyond the witness sightings. Sheriff Ingrid Braun of the Mono County Sheriff's Office has stated that her department remains open to all possibilities regarding Cari's disappearance. They have no prevailing theory about what happened to her, underscoring the perplexing nature of this case. The FBI has also become involved in the investigation, but despite their resources, no significant leads have emerged. The case has garnered national attention, featured on various true crime shows and podcasts, yet answers remain elusive. Cari's family continues to hold out hope for her return or for answers about her fate. They've maintained an active presence on social media, sharing updates and keeping Cari's story in the public eye. However, as years pass, the pain of not knowing what happened to Cari only deepens. The disappearance of Cari Gus remains one of California's most baffling missing persons cases. The combination of her altered mental state prior to vanishing, the early morning departure, and the lack of physical evidence has created a mystery that continues to confound investigators and haunt her loved ones. As of 2024, more than 5 years after she went missing, Cari Gus's case remains unsolved. The Mono County Sheriff's Office continues to seek information from the public, maintaining a dedicated tip line for any leads related to her disappearance. The search for Cari and for answers goes on, with investigators and family alike hoping that someday the truth about what happened on that October morning in 2018 will finally come to light. In the quiet town of Sturgis, Michigan, a young mother's disappearance would leave a community searching for answers and a family desperate for closure. This is the story of Brittany Nicole Shank, a 23-year-old woman who vanished on a foggy night in November 2018, leaving behind 4 children and a trail of questions. Brittany's life was marked by turbulence and change. At just 23, she had already been married multiple times and was the mother of 4 children, none of whom were in her direct custody at the time of her disappearance. Despite this, Brittany was actively working to remain a part of her children's lives while simultaneously battling for sobriety and seeking stable employment. In the years leading up to her disappearance, Brittany's life was characterized by frequent changes. She maintained multiple social media accounts, creating new ones with each significant life event. Her relationships were often tumultuous, with a history of dating men described as bad boys. Both of her known husbands had prior arrests for minor offenses related to bar fights or drug-related incidents. On November 30th, 2018, the day Brittany vanished, events took a strange turn. Earlier that day, she was seen in the company of an unidentified man in his early to mid-20s, described as 5'6" to 5'8", tall, with short blonde hair and mutton chop sideburns. The significance of this man's presence remains unclear to investigators. As night fell and a dense fog settled over Sturgis, Brittany borrowed her boyfriend's car. At approximately 9:30 p.m., while driving along the 33,000 block of Fawn River Road, Brittany's vehicle veered off the road in a single-car crash. What happened next would set in motion a series of events that continue to baffle investigators to this day. Witnesses reported seeing Brittany walking from house to house in the area immediately following the crash. She was described as confused and seeking help, notably without a coat or shoes despite the cold November night. Her feet appeared to be cut, likely from walking on broken glass from the accident or the rough gravel road. Cell phone records reveal that Brittany attempted to call both her grandmother and the police multiple times. However, due to poor reception in the area, none of these calls successfully connected. This crucial detail highlights the isolation Brittany faced in her moment of need. One resident who encountered Brittany that night provided a green army jacket to keep her warm. However, when he turned away briefly to call for help, Brittany inexplicably fled. This witness, like Brittany, struggled to get a cell signal, but eventually managed to reach 911. He reported to the police that Brittany had been acting erratically. The last confirmed sighting of Brittany Shank was on that foggy night, confused and seemingly disoriented, walking along Fawn River Road. From that point forward, Brittany vanished without a trace. The initial investigation faced several challenges. The poor weather conditions on the night of Brittany's disappearance hampered immediate search efforts. The fog that had contributed to her car accident also limited visibility for any potential witnesses or search parties. Investigators had to contend with Brittany's complex personal history. Her multiple relationships and frequent life changes made it difficult to compile a comprehensive list of individuals who might have information about her disappearance. Each new lead seemed to uncover more questions than answers. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement faced a web of conflicting information and numerous red herrings, as described by James Basinger, host of the Hide and Seek podcast. The sheer number of theories and potential suspects was unusual, even for a missing persons case. Investigators meticulously combed through Brittany's social media presence, including her multiple Facebook accounts. They interviewed friends, family members, and acquaintances, attempting to piece together Brittany's final days and hours. However, her tumultuous lifestyle and the frequent changes in her social circle made it challenging to establish a clear timeline or identify potential persons of interest. The case took an unexpected turn when it was revealed that Brittany had dyed her hair blue-black on the morning of her disappearance, contradicting initial reports of her having red hair with shaved sides. This discrepancy in her description added another layer of complexity to the search efforts. Brittany's mother, Jessica Rolfe, has been a tireless advocate for her daughter. In emotional pleas to the media, she has stated, "Brittany, I love you, and we all hope you come home safely. And I'm gonna find you no matter what. I promise." Her determination has been a driving force in keeping the investigation active. In a significant development, the Michigan State Police took over the investigation, bringing additional resources and expertise to the case. They established a tip line and an online reporting system, encouraging anyone with information to come forward. The Hide and Seek podcast series brought renewed attention to Brittany's case in recent years. Host James Basinger criticized what he perceived as a out-of-sight, out-of-mind approach by the Southwest Michigan community. His in-depth exploration of the case aimed to prompt new leads and keep Brittany's story in the public consciousness. Despite these efforts, as of today, Brittany Nicole Shank remains missing. Her case continues to baffle investigators with more questions than answers. The night of November 30th, 2018, remains shrouded in mystery, much like the fog that blanketed Sturgis on that fateful evening. As the investigation continues, authorities urge anyone with information about Brittany's disappearance to come forward. The case remains open, with investigators hoping that each new day might bring the breakthrough needed to solve this perplexing mystery and bring closure to Brittany's family. Atlantic City, New Jersey, November 20th, 2006. A grim discovery shocks the seaside resort town. 4 women are found dead in a drainage ditch behind the Golden Key Motel, just off the Black Horse Pike. The victims are positioned face down in a row, each approximately 60 feet apart, all facing east. They are fully clothed except for their shoes and socks. This chilling scene marks the beginning of a case that would come to be known as the Atlantic City serial killings. Among the victims is 35-year-old Kim Raffo. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Kim had moved to Atlantic City in 2003 with her boyfriend. She was a mother of 2, having married young. Despite attempts to turn her life around, including a brief stint living with her husband in Long Island just weeks before her death, Kim struggled with drug addiction and had been working as a sex worker in Atlantic City. The last confirmed sighting of Kim Raffo was in the early morning hours of November 19, 2006. Less than 48 hours later, her body would be discovered alongside 3 other women in that desolate drainage ditch. The discovery of Kim Raffo and the 3 other victims marked the beginning of a complex and haunting case that would perplex investigators for years to come. As detectives began to piece together the victims' final movements, they found themselves delving into the dark underbelly of Atlantic City, a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of its famous casinos and boardwalk. The investigation into the murders of Kim Raffo and the 3 other women quickly intensified. Detectives from the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office and the FBI worked tirelessly to gather evidence and piece together the victims' final hours. Autopsy results revealed that all 4 women had been strangled, confirming suspicions of a serial killer. The lack of defensive wounds suggested the killer may have been someone the victims knew or trusted. Despite the bodies being found in water, forensic experts were able to recover trace evidence, including fibers and DNA samples. Investigators canvassed the area around the Golden Key Motel, interviewing potential witnesses and reviewing security camera footage. They focused on the stretch of the Black Horse Pike, known for prostitution, hoping to find anyone who might have seen the victims in their final days. One lead came from a local restaurant worker who reported seeing Kim Raffo at around 2:30 a.m. on November 19th, just hours before she was believed to have been killed. The witness described Kim having a meal and then being picked up by someone in a vehicle. This sighting became a crucial piece of the timeline, but frustratingly, it did not lead to the identification of a suspect. As the investigation progressed, detectives delved into the backgrounds of each victim. They discovered that all 4 women had struggled with drug addiction and had worked in the sex trade. This common thread led investigators to explore possible connections to drug dealers or regular clients, but no solid suspects emerged. The case took on national prominence, with media outlets across the country reporting on the Eastbound Strangler, a moniker derived from the victims' eastward-facing positions. The intense scrutiny brought both benefits and challenges to the investigation. While it generated numerous tips from the public, it also created pressure on law enforcement to solve the case quickly. Despite the extensive efforts of investigators, including the creation of a task force dedicated to the case, leads began to dry up. The killer had left few traces, and the transient nature of the victims' lifestyles made it difficult to establish a clear pattern or connection to a specific individual. Detectives continued to pursue every possible lead. They interviewed hundreds of potential witnesses, analyzed countless hours of surveillance footage, and followed up on numerous tips from the public. However, the case remained frustratingly elusive. In 2007, on the 1-year anniversary of the murders, authorities renewed their appeal to the public for information. They released new details about the case, hoping to jog someone's memory or encourage reluctant witnesses to come forward. Despite these efforts, no significant breakthroughs materialized. Over the years, the case has been revisited multiple times by different investigative teams. In 2015, nearly a decade after the murders, Atlantic City authorities announced they were eyeing more than one person of interest in the case. This development sparked hope, but ultimately did not lead to any arrests. The emergence of new forensic technologies has allowed investigators to re-examine evidence collected from the crime scene. Advanced DNA analysis techniques have been applied to the samples recovered, but as of now, no matches have been found in criminal databases. In 2023, the arrest of Rex Heuermann in connection with the Long Island serial killer case, briefly reignited interest in the Atlantic City murders. Some speculated about a possible connection due to similarities between the cases. However, police quickly determined that Heuermann was not responsible for the Atlantic City killings, ruling out any link between the two cases. The impact of these unsolved murders continues to resonate in Atlantic City. The case has shed light on the vulnerabilities faced by sex workers and individuals struggling with addiction, leading to increased advocacy for harm reduction programs and support services in the area. For the families of Kim Raffo and the other victims, the lack of closure remains a source of ongoing pain. Hugh Raffo, Kim's husband, has spoken publicly about the toll the unsolved case has taken on him and their children. Despite the passage of time, he continues to hope for answers and justice for Kim. Law enforcement officials maintain that the case remains active. The Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office periodically reviews the evidence and follows up on any new leads that emerge. They continue to urge anyone with information about the murders to come forward, emphasizing that even seemingly insignificant details could be crucial in solving the case. As of October 2024, nearly 18 years after the discovery of the bodies, the case of the Atlantic City serial killings remains unsolved. The identity of the killer, dubbed the Eastbound Strangler, continues to elude investigators. The murders of Kim Raffo and the 3 other women stand as a haunting reminder of a dark chapter in Atlantic City's history, a mystery that continues to challenge law enforcement and haunt the community. In the summer of 1995, a small town in Arkansas became the epicenter of a mystery that would haunt the nation for decades. 6-year-old Morgan Nick vanished without a trace from a Little League baseball game in Alma, leaving behind a devastated family and a community in shock. This disappearance, which occurred on June 9th, would become one of the most perplexing cold cases in American history. Alma, Arkansas, a quiet town of just over 5,000 residents, was not accustomed to such high-profile crimes. The disappearance of Morgan Nick would change that forever. Morgan, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed child described as vivacious and friendly, was last seen at the Alma Baseball Complex, where she had been watching a game with her mother, Colleen Nick. The events of that fateful night seemed ordinary at first. Morgan had asked her mother's permission to catch fireflies with her friends. Colleen, though initially hesitant, agreed. It was a decision that would haunt her for years to come. The last confirmed sighting of Morgan was near the family car, where she was emptying sand from her shoes. As the evening progressed, a sinister presence was noted by witnesses at the baseball field. An unidentified man was observed, watching Morgan and her friends as they played. When questioned later, the children described the man as creepy and reported that he had been talking to Morgan in the field. This information, coupled with the sighting of a red pickup truck with a white camper shell that left the area around the time Morgan disappeared, would become crucial elements in the investigation. The realization that Morgan was missing struck like a thunderbolt. When her friends returned to their families, Morgan was nowhere to be found. The carefree atmosphere of the Little League game quickly dissolved into panic and fear. Colleen Nick immediately alerted authorities, and a frantic search began, extending from the baseball complex into the surrounding areas. As night turned to dawn, the harsh reality set in. Morgan Nick had vanished without a trace. Law enforcement agencies quickly mobilized, launching an extensive search and investigation. The FBI became involved, recognizing the potential of a child abduction case that crossed state lines. In the days following Morgan's disappearance, a disturbing pattern emerged. On the same day Morgan vanished, another attempted abduction was reported in Alma. A man matching the description of Morgan's suspected abductor tried to lure a small child into his car at a local laundromat. The attempt was unsuccessful, but it raised alarming questions about a potential predator operating in the area. The following day, June 10th, brought another chilling incident. In nearby Fort Smith, Arkansas, a man fitting the same description approached a young girl at a convenience store. He grabbed her and attempted to force her into the men's restroom. Fortunately, the girl's mother intervened, fighting off the attacker. These incidents, occurring in such close proximity to Morgan's disappearance, both geographically and temporally, suggested a possible connection. As the investigation progressed, leads began to surface. On June 14th, a man named Mark Waddle was arrested and investigated as a potential suspect. Waddle was driving a truck similar to the one seen leaving the baseball field on the night of Morgan's disappearance. However, after thorough questioning and investigation, Waddle was cleared of any involvement in the case. The investigation faced numerous challenges, including false leads and hoaxes. On June 26th, a tip came in claiming that Morgan had been sighted in Stuttgart, Arkansas. This led to an extensive search operation that continued until 4:30 a.m. the next day. Ultimately, the tip was revealed to be a hoax when the informant failed a lie detector test about the truthfulness of his information. This incident not only wasted valuable police resources, but also dealt an emotional blow to those desperately hoping for Morgan's safe return. In an attempt to gather more information, law enforcement set up roadblocks in Alma on July 23, 1995. They questioned those entering and leaving the town, hoping to uncover new leads. While this effort didn't yield any breakthroughs in Morgan's case, it did result in several unrelated arrests for drug possession and driving under the influence. The investigation into Morgan's disappearance continued to evolve over the years, with new leads and technologies bringing both hope and frustration. In January 2002, a tip led investigators to a private property in Boonville, Arkansas, where it was suggested Morgan might be buried. Despite a thorough search, no evidence was found. However, a significant development occurred in August 1995, though its importance wouldn't be fully realized until years later. A young girl walking home with her brothers was approached by a man in a red pickup truck with a white cab. The man, allegedly intoxicated, made sexual comments and tried to lure her into his vehicle with promises of money. The girl's screams caused the man to flee, hitting a telephone pole as he sped away. Witnesses provided a license plate number that would later prove crucial. The case saw renewed interest in 2017 when detectives received a tip suggesting Morgan might be buried on a property in Spiro, Oklahoma. A 10-hour excavation yielded no results, but it demonstrated the ongoing commitment to solving the case. In 2021, the release of a 4-part docuseries titled Still Missing Morgan on Hulu reignited public interest and generated hundreds of new leads. This increased attention led to a significant breakthrough in November 2021 when the FBI named Billy Jack Links as a person of interest in the case. Links, who had died in prison in 2000, became the focus of the investigation due to his physical proximity to the crime scene, his resemblance to witness descriptions, and his ownership of a truck matching the one seen on the night of Morgan's disappearance. In February 2023, forensic testing of Links's truck which had been impounded for decades, revealed crucial evidence. While DNA testing of blood and hair found under the floor mats was inconclusive, investigators discovered clothing fibers that matched the type of shirt Morgan was wearing when she disappeared. The most recent development came on October 5, 2024, when the Alma Police Department officially named Billy Jack Links as the suspect in Morgan Nick's disappearance. This announcement, made by Police Chief Jeff Pointer, marked the first time in 3 decades that a suspect had been identified in the case. Throughout the years, Morgan's mother, Colleen Nick, has been a tireless advocate for missing children. She founded the Morgan Nick Foundation to educate the public on child safety and to assist families of missing children. Her efforts led to the renaming of the Arkansas Amber Alert System in Morgan's honor. Love and respect for this family, and hope they one day find peace. On December 5, 2015, 19-year-old Caitlyn Akens vanished without a trace, leaving behind a perplexing trail of clues and unanswered questions. All of this happening in the quiet town of Spotsylvania County, Virginia. It didn't seem possible. However, it would become a haunting mystery that continues to baffle investigators and torment her loved ones. Caitlyn was born on September 2, 1996, in Spotsylvania County. Known for her kind heart and free spirit, she had recently moved to Arizona to live with her fiancé, Amber Rios, and pursue her dream of becoming a cosmetologist. In December 2015, Caitlyn returned to Virginia for a brief visit to attend her mother's wedding. On the morning of December 5th, Caitlyn was scheduled to fly back to Arizona from Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. Her ex-stepfather, James Branton, offered to drive her to the airport. According to Branton, he picked Caitlyn up from her mother's home in Partlow, Virginia, at around 8:30 a.m. for the 77-mile journey to the airport. What should have been a routine trip took an unexpected turn. Branton later claimed that Caitlyn had a change of heart during the drive and asked to be dropped off at Springfield Mall near the Franconia Springfield Metro Station, allegedly to meet a friend. This decision, if true, marked the last confirmed sighting of Caitlyn Akens. The day unfolded with a series of puzzling communications. At 11:56 a.m., Caitlyn texted her fiancé, Amber, stating, "Something came up. I'm not coming back today. I'll let you know when I get a new flight. I won't be able to text for a bit." This message was out of character for Caitlyn, who had been eager to return to Arizona. At 1:52 p.m., James Branton texted Caitlyn's mother, Lisa Sullivan, informing her that he had dropped Caitlyn off at the Springfield Metro Station. This information immediately alarmed Lisa, as it was highly unusual for her daughter. The mystery deepened at 2 p.m. when Lisa received a text from Caitlyn's phone claiming she was at the airport. The message read, "I'm at the airport. Battery dying, so won't be able to text for a bit." Lisa replied, asking Caitlyn to let her know when she boarded the plane. However, flight records would later confirm that Caitlyn never boarded her scheduled flight. The final communication came at 7:15 p.m. when Caitlyn's phone sent 2 more texts to her mother. "I'm staying with a friend, and I need some time alone." Lisa, growing increasingly worried, responded with pleas for Caitlyn to call her, but received no further response. The investigation began in earnest when Caitlyn failed to return to Arizona as planned. On December 7th, 2 days after her disappearance, a critical piece of evidence emerged. Caitlyn's luggage was discovered in a drainage ditch near River Road in Fredericksburg, Virginia, approximately 50 miles from Springfield Mall and in the opposite direction of the airport. The suitcase contained Caitlyn's wallet, identification, cash, and some clothes, raising immediate suspicions of foul play. The lack of security camera footage or eyewitnesses at Springfield Mall meant that James Branton's account of dropping Caitlyn off could neither be confirmed nor refuted. Investigators meticulously combed through cell phone records, interviewed potential witnesses, and conducted extensive searches of the areas where Caitlyn was last seen and where her luggage was found. The Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office, in collaboration with the FBI, pursued numerous leads over the following months and years. They investigated Caitlyn's personal relationships, examined her online activity, and explored various scenarios ranging from voluntary disappearance to abduction. Despite these efforts, no significant breakthroughs emerged. James Branton remained a person of interest due to his status as the last known person to see Caitlyn. However, without concrete evidence linking him to her disappearance, authorities were unable to make any arrests or file charges. Branton maintained his original story throughout questioning and subsequent interviews. In the years following Caitlyn's disappearance, her family, particularly her mother, Lisa Sullivan, and sister Gabrielle, have been tireless advocates for keeping the case in the public eye. They've organized vigils, distributed flyers, and utilized social media to spread awareness about Caitlyn's case. The family has also worked closely with missing persons organizations to highlight not only Caitlyn's case, but also the broader issue of missing young adults. As each anniversary of Caitlyn's disappearance passes, law enforcement officials renew their calls for information from the public. The Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office continues to treat this as an active missing persons case, periodically reviewing evidence and following up on any new leads that emerge. The disappearance of Caitlyn Akens remains one of Virginia's most perplexing unsolved cases. As of now, the whereabouts of Caitlyn Akens remain unknown, and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance continue to be shrouded in mystery. In the quiet town of Mays Landing, New Jersey, a promising young life was cut tragically short on July 12, 2015. Tiffany Valiante, an 18-year-old star athlete with a bright future ahead, vanished into the night, only to be found dead on nearby train tracks hours later. What initially appeared to be a straightforward case of suicide soon unraveled into a complex web of unanswered questions, mishandled evidence, and a family's relentless pursuit of the truth. Tiffany stood tall at 6 feet 2 inches tall, a natural athlete who had recently graduated from Oakrest High School. She had earned a volleyball scholarship to Mercy College in New York, where she planned to study criminal justice. Known for her kind heart and infectious energy, Tiffany was described by those who knew her as happy-go-lucky and maternal towards her nieces and nephews. On that fateful summer evening, Tiffany attended a graduation party for her cousin, just across the street from her family's home on Manheim Avenue. The celebration was in full swing when, at around 9:00 p.m., a phone call set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the lives of the Valiante family. A friend of Tiffany's contacted her parents, Diane and Steve, accusing their daughter of using her debit card without permission. This led to a confrontation between Tiffany and her mother. Shortly after, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Tiffany walked away from her home, captured on a Deer camera in the family's yard, wearing a t-shirt, white shorts, new shoes, and a headband. What happened in the next hour and 45 minutes remains a mystery. At 11:16 p.m., the quiet night was shattered when a southbound NJ Transit train struck a person on the tracks at mile marker 45 in Galloway Township. The victim was Tiffany Valiante. The initial investigation moved swiftly. Within 6 days, Tiffany's death was ruled a suicide. Investigators hypothesized that after leaving home, Tiffany had walked over 4 miles barefoot through rough terrain to the incident site. However, this theory raised immediate red flags for those who knew Tiffany best. The Valiante family was stunned by the suicide ruling. They knew Tiffany as a vibrant young woman with plans for her future, not someone contemplating ending her life. Moreover, Tiffany suffered from nyctophobia, an extreme fear of the dark. The idea that she would willingly venture miles into the pitch-black night seemed implausible to those who knew her. As the family grappled with their loss, inconsistencies in the official narrative began to surface. The autopsy revealed that Tiffany's feet were clean and unmarked, despite the theory that she had walked barefoot for miles over rough terrain. Her shorts were missing when her body was found, yet no rape kit was performed during the autopsy. These oversights would later become central to the family's fight for a more thorough investigation. 2 weeks after Tiffany's death, her mother Diane made a startling discovery. While walking to clear her head, about a mile from their home, she found Tiffany's shoes and headband neatly stacked under a tree. Alongside these items were a sweatshirt and keychain that Diane didn't recognize as belonging to her daughter. This find contradicted the official theory about Tiffany's final journey and raised new questions about what really happened that night. The investigation's handling of evidence soon came under scrutiny. The keychain found with Tiffany's belongings mysteriously disappeared before it could be analyzed. A bloodied axe discovered near a wooded encampment close to the incident site was not treated as potential evidence in a crime scene. These missteps would later be compounded by revelations of broader evidence mishandling. As the Valiante family sought answers, they encountered resistance from official channels. NJ Transit investigators were accused of bungling evidence and providing conflicting statements. The apprentice engineer operating the train that struck Tiffany was not tested for intoxication, a standard procedure in such incidents. Determined to uncover the truth, the Valiantes enlisted the help of attorney Paul D'Amato. In the years following Tiffany's death, D'Amato filed several lawsuits aimed at changing the manner of death from suicide to undetermined, which would allow the case to be reopened and investigated as a potential crime. In 2017, D'Amato filed a civil lawsuit in New Jersey Superior Court, not only requesting a change in the medical examiner's ruling, but also demanding a jury trial to address allegations of kidnapping, assault and battery, manslaughter, murder, conspiracy, and destruction of evidence. This bold move was supported by an independent investigation conducted by Louise Hausman, a former medical examiner, who detailed numerous flaws in the original investigation. Despite these efforts, in March 2018, State Medical Examiner Andrew Falzon upheld the initial suicide ruling. This setback did not deter the Valiante family or their legal team. They continued to push for answers and a more thorough examination of the evidence. A significant breakthrough came in December 2020 when D'Amato won a discovery motion in Atlantic County Superior Court. This ruling allowed for the reopening of discovery and DNA testing of evidence from the scene. However, what should have been a step towards clarity only revealed further issues with the handling of the case. The DNA testing results were shocking. Key evidence had been so grossly mishandled that it was deemed to be of no probative scientific value. Tiffany's T-shirt, a crucial piece of evidence, had been improperly stored, allowing mold to grow on it. The bloodied axe found near the scene and the mysterious keychain discovered with Tiffany's shoes had both been lost before they could be tested. These revelations of evidence mishandling added fuel to the family's argument that the initial investigation was inadequate and that Tiffany's death deserved a more thorough examination. The family's theory that Tiffany may have been abducted, possibly assaulted, and then either chased or thrown in front of the train to cover up the crime gained more traction in light of these investigative failures. Throughout this ordeal, the Valiante family has remained steadfast in their pursuit of the truth. They've erected multiple memorials to Tiffany, including a large T made of lumber in their backyard and another at the site of the incident. Each year, they hold remembrance ceremonies, refusing to let Tiffany's memory fade or the questions surrounding her death go unanswered. In October 2022, when it was announced that Tiffany's story would be featured in the third season of Netflix's Unsolved Mysteries, this development brought renewed attention to the case, offering hope that fresh eyes and public interest might lead to new information or witnesses coming forward. The Netflix feature highlighted the many inconsistencies in the official narrative. It questioned how Tiffany, who was terrified of the dark, could have walked miles through unfamiliar woods at night. It also raised concerns about the missing clothing, the mishandled evidence, and the rush to judgment in ruling her death a suicide without a psychological autopsy or a more thorough investigation of alternative scenarios. Today, years after Tiffany's death, many questions remain unanswered. Was Tiffany Valiante the victim of foul play, as her family believes? Was her death truly a suicide, as officially ruled? Or does the truth lie somewhere in between, obscured by a flawed investigation and mishandled evidence? What is clear is that the official investigation failed to provide the Valiante family with the answers and closure they deserve. The mishandling of evidence, the rush to judgment, and the resistance to reopening the case have only deepened the tragedy of Tiffany's untimely death. Tiffany Valiante's story is far from over. As new technologies emerge and public interest continues to grow, there remains hope that one day the full truth of what happened on that July night in 2015 will come to light. Until then, Tiffany's memory lives on through her family's tireless efforts, serving as a call for justice not just for her, but for all victims of unsolved crimes. In the early hours of December 26, 1996, a frantic 911 call from the affluent Ramsey family home in Boulder, Colorado, set in motion one of the most perplexing and controversial criminal investigations in American history. 6-year-old JohnBenet Patricia Ramsey, a child beauty queen, had vanished from her bed. What began as a kidnapping case quickly evolved into a homicide investigation that would captivate the nation for decades to come. The Ramsey family, consisting of father JohnBenet Ramsey, mother Patricia Patsy Ramsey, and 9-year-old brother Burke, had celebrated Christmas Day with friends before returning home that evening. By the following morning, their lives would be forever altered. At approximately 5:52 a.m. on December 26th, Patsy Ramsey called 911, reporting that she had found a ransom note demanding $118,000 for her daughter's safe return. This 3-page document, unusually long for a ransom note, was written on paper from a pad found in the Ramsey home. The specificity of the ransom amount, matching John Ramsey's recent bonus, immediately raised questions. Boulder Police Department officers arrived at the scene within minutes. Despite the kidnapping report, the house was not immediately secured as a crime scene. Friends of the family were allowed to enter and move freely throughout the home, potentially contaminating evidence. At approximately 1:05 p.m., John Ramsey, accompanied by a family friend, discovered JohnBenet's body in the wine cellar of the basement. The child was found with a garrote around her neck, her wrists bound, and duct tape over her mouth. The autopsy would later reveal that she had suffered a skull fracture and had been sexually assaulted. The Boulder Police Department's handling of the crime scene came under immediate scrutiny. Critical mistakes were made in the crucial early hours of the investigation. The home was not properly sealed off. Potential evidence was not immediately collected, and the victims, John and Patsy Ramsey, were not separated for questioning, as is standard procedure in such cases. As news of the murder spread, media descended on Boulder. The case quickly became a national sensation, fueled by the victims' participation in child beauty pageants and the family's wealth and social status. Tabloids and TV news programs competed for scoops, often prioritizing sensationalism over factual reporting. The investigation initially focused on the parents, John and Patsy Ramsey. Their behavior in the aftermath of the crime was scrutinized, with some investigators finding it suspicious. However, DNA evidence found on JohnBenet's clothing did not match any family members. In the months and years that followed, numerous theories emerged. Some investigators believed an intruder had committed the crime, pointing to a broken basement window and unidentified DNA evidence. Others remained convinced the killer was someone within the household, citing the ransom note's peculiarities and the improbability of an intruder spending hours in the home undetected. The case took many twists and turns over the years. In 1999, a grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime. However, the district attorney refused to sign the indictment, citing insufficient evidence. In 2008, advancements in DNA technology led to the Ramsey family being formally exonerated by the Boulder District Attorney's Office. The DNA profile found on JohnBenet's clothing was determined to belong to an unknown male, supporting the intruder theory. Despite one of the most extensive and expensive criminal investigations in Colorado history, the case remains unsolved. The Boulder Police Department continues to receive tips and pursue leads, but no arrests have been made. The investigation into JohnBenet's murder was fraught with complications from the outset. The ransom note, a crucial piece of evidence, became a subject of intense scrutiny. Written on paper from the Ramsey home and with a pen found in the house, its length and content were highly unusual for a kidnapping scenario. Handwriting experts analyzed the note extensively, with some concluding that Patsy Ramsey could not be excluded as the author, though this was never definitively proven. The autopsy, conducted on December 27, 1996, by Boulder County Coroner Dr. John Meyer, revealed critical details about JohnBenet's death. The official cause was listed as asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. The autopsy also found evidence of sexual assault, though there was debate among experts about whether this was chronic or acute. Importantly, undigested pineapple was found in JohnBenet's digestive tract, a detail that would become significant as the investigation unfolded. In the days following the murder, police collected DNA samples and fingerprints from family members and close associates. They also discovered a bowl of pineapple on the kitchen counter with Burke and Patsy's fingerprints on it, despite Patsy's insistence that she hadn't fed the children that night. This discrepancy added to the suspicions surrounding the family's account of events. The Ramseys' behavior in the aftermath of the murder drew criticism and suspicion. On January 1st, 1997, they appeared on CNN for an interview, a move many considered unusual for grieving parents. Their decision to hire separate lawyers and a public relations firm also raised eyebrows among investigators and the public. As the investigation progressed, several key figures emerged. Detective Linda Arndt, the first detective on the scene, faced criticism for her handling of the crime scene. Lou Smith, a veteran homicide detective brought in to assist, became convinced of the Ramseys' innocence and developed the intruder theory. Steve Thomas, a lead detective on the case, resigned in 1998, citing his belief that the district attorney's office had mishandled the investigation. The case took an unexpected turn in August 2006 when John Mark Carr, a schoolteacher in Thailand, confessed to the murder. However, his DNA did not match the evidence found at the crime scene, and he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. In 2008, Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey officially exonerated the Ramsey family based on new DNA evidence. Using touch DNA analysis, a profile was developed from JohnBenet's long johns that did not match any family members. This led to a formal apology to the Ramseys for the suspicion they had endured. Despite this exoneration, controversy continued to surround the case. In 2013, it was revealed that the 1999 grand jury had actually voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey, but the district attorney at the time, Alex Hunter, had refused to sign the indictment due to a lack of evidence. The investigation has continued to evolve with advancements in forensic technology. In 2016, the Boulder Police Department and District Attorney's Office announced they would pursue new DNA testing on evidence from the case. However, as of 2023, these efforts have not led to any significant breakthroughs. Throughout the years, various theories and potential suspects have emerged in the JohnBenet Ramsey case. One such individual was Gary Oliva, a convicted pedophile who had been in the Boulder area at the time of the murder. In 2019, Oliva allegedly confessed to the crime in letters sent to a former high school classmate, but Boulder police stated that he had been ruled out as a suspect through DNA testing. Another person of interest was Michael Helgoth, a local auto salvage worker who died by suicide in 1997, shortly after a press conference where authorities announced they were closing in on a suspect. Some investigators believed Helgoth may have been involved, but DNA evidence did not support this theory. The case has also been marked by internal conflicts within the investigative team. In September 1998, Lou Smith resigned from the investigation, stating that he believed the Boulder Police Department was wrongly focused on the Ramsey family and ignoring evidence of an intruder. Smith continued to work on the case independently until his death in 2010, compiling a substantial file of evidence supporting the intruder theory. In 2016, as the 20th anniversary of JohnBenet's death approached, several new developments occurred. Burke Ramsey, JohnBenet's brother, gave his first public interview on the Dr. Phil show, adamantly denying any involvement in his sister's death. That same year, a team of investigators presented a controversial theory in a CBS documentary suggesting that Burke may have accidentally killed his sister, with the parents then staging a cover-up. This led to a defamation lawsuit from Burke against CBS, which was settled out of court in 2019. The 911 call made by Patsy Ramsey on the morning of December 26, 1996, has been a subject of ongoing analysis. In 2016, the 911 operator, Kimberly Archuleta, spoke publicly for the first time about her recollections of the call. She stated that she heard voices in the background after Patsy thought she had hung up the phone, potentially contradicting the Ramseys' claim that their son Burke was asleep at the time. In recent years, John Ramsey has continued to push for further investigation into his daughter's murder. In May 2022, he petitioned Colorado Governor Jared Polis to allow an independent agency to conduct new DNA testing on evidence from the case, citing advancements in genetic genealogy that have helped solve other cold cases. The Boulder Police Department has maintained that the case remains open and active. In December 2021, they announced that they had processed more than 1,500 pieces of evidence and analyzed nearly 1,000 DNA samples related to the case. They also stated their intention to use new DNA technology to potentially identify JohnBenet's killer. In a significant development in February 2023, previously unreleased documents from Lou Smith's investigation were shared with current investigators. These documents included an unredacted 1997 report showing that DNA evidence recovered from under JohnBenet's fingernails and from her clothing did not match family members or others close to the household, contradicting the suspicion that had long surrounded the Ramsey family. The JohnBenet Ramsey case has had a lasting impact on American culture and the criminal justice system. It highlighted the challenges of high-profile investigations and the potential pitfalls of media scrutiny in criminal cases. The case also sparked debates about child beauty pageants and their potential risks. In the years following JohnBenet's murder, several books were published about the case, each offering different perspectives and theories. Former lead detective Steve Thomas wrote JohnBenet Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation in 2000, criticizing the handling of the case and pointing to Patsy Ramsey as the likely killer. In contrast, Lou Smith co-authored The Cases That Haunt Us in 2000, presenting evidence for the intruder theory. The Ramsey family also published their own account. In 2000, John and Patsy Ramsey released The Death of Innocence, detailing their experiences and maintaining their innocence. John Ramsey later wrote The Other Side of Suffering in 2012, discussing how his faith helped him cope with the tragedy and subsequent scrutiny. In 2006, Patsy Ramsey died of ovarian cancer without ever seeing her daughter's killer brought to justice. John Ramsey has since remarried and continues to advocate for further investigation into the case. The investigation has been marked by a series of technological advancements and their application to the evidence. In 2008, the technique of touch DNA analysis was used to develop a DNA profile from JohnBenet's clothing, leading to the Ramseys' exoneration. However, subsequent reviews of the DNA evidence have raised questions about the interpretation of these results. In 2016, the Boulder Police Department and the District Attorney's Office announced a new round of DNA testing using more advanced techniques. They submitted 30 samplers to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for updated analysis. However, the results of these tests have not been publicly released. The case has also been the subject of numerous television documentaries and series, each presenting different aspects of the investigation and various theories. These productions have kept the case in the public eye and have sometimes led to new information coming to light. In 2019, genetic genealogy emerged as a powerful tool in solving cold cases, as demonstrated by the arrest of the Golden State Killer. This development led to renewed calls for applying this technique to the DNA evidence in the JohnBenet case. However, the viability of the available DNA samples for this type of analysis remains uncertain. As of 2023, the Boulder Police Department maintains that the case is still open and active. They continue to receive tips and pursue leads, although the volume has decreased over the years. The department has stated that they have processed more than 1,500 pieces of evidence and analyzed nearly 1,000 DNA samples to date. In recent years, there has been a push for greater transparency in the case. In 2022, John Ramsey launched a petition calling on the governor of Colorado to allow an independent agency to conduct new DNA testing on the evidence. This effort reflects ongoing frustration with the pace and direction of the official investigation. In February 2023, a significant development occurred when the family of Lou Smit, the late detective who had long advocated for the intruder theory, released a treasure trove of previously unseen documents from his personal investigation. These documents included an unredacted 1997 report showing that DNA evidence found under JohnBenet's fingernails and on her clothing did not match family members or close associates. This revelation further supported the intruder theory and raised questions about why the Boulder Police Department had continued to focus on the Ramsey family despite this early DNA evidence. The release of these documents coincided with the publication of a new book, Lou and JohnBenet, a legendary lawman's quest to solve a child beauty queen's murder, written by John Wesley Anderson, a friend of Lou Smit. The book details Smith's tireless efforts to solve the case and argues that the Boulder police ignored crucial DNA evidence that could have led to identifying JohnBenet's killer. As the case approaches its third decade, the impact of time on the investigation becomes increasingly apparent. Key witnesses have passed away, memories have faded, and some physical evidence may have degraded. However, advancements in forensic technology continue to offer hope for eventually solving the case. In November 2022, the Boulder Police Department announced that they would bring the Ramsey case before the Colorado Cold Case Review Team in 2023. This team, formed in 2009, consists of professional investigative, analytical, and forensic experts from across the state who meet several times a year to review unsolved cases. As of September 2023, nearly 2 years after DNA samples from over 1,000 people across 19 states were collected, the Boulder police reported having several people on their radar, though no suspects have been publicly named. They described the investigation as a marathon, not a sprint, indicating that while progress is being made, the resolution of the case may still be some time away. The JohnBenet Ramsey case stands as one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history. A complex web of evidence, theories, and unanswered questions. In the early hours of August 30th, 2013, a red Toyota Highlander was found abandoned and overturned on Castaic Lake Main Ramp Road in California. The vehicle belonged to 19-year-old Bryce Laspisa, a college student who had seemingly vanished without a trace. Bryce Laspisa was a talented art student at Sierra College in Rocklin, California. Standing out with his striking red hair and green eyes, Bryce was described by those who knew him as charismatic, kind, and artistically gifted. He had moved to California with his parents, Karen and Michael Laspisa, after graduating high school in Illinois on August 26, 2013. Bryce attended his classes as usual, even calling his mother that evening to express his excitement about the new semester. However, his behavior in the days that followed would take an alarming turn. On August 28th, Bryce's roommate, Sean Dixon, contacted Karen Laspisa with concerns about Bryce's behavior. He reported that Bryce had been awake for 2 to 3 days straight, using the prescription drug Vyvanse recreationally and consuming alcohol. This marked a significant departure from Bryce's typical conduct. That same day, Bryce exhibited what could be interpreted as suicidal tendencies. He gave away his Xbox and a pair of diamond earrings his mother had given him. He sent troubling text messages to his girlfriend Kim Sly, and his roommate Sean. To Kim, he wrote, "You're better off without me," while he told Sean, "I love you, bro. Seriously. You're the best person I've ever met. You've saved my soul." At 11:30 p.m. on August 28th, Bryce decided to leave Kim's house and drive home. Initially, Kim withheld his car keys out of concern, but after Karen intervened, Bryce was allowed to leave. At 1 a.m. on August 29th, Bryce called his mother, saying he was about an hour away from his apartment. What happened next would set in motion a series of baffling events that culminated in Bryce's disappearance. The following morning, between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. on August 29th, Cari Laspisa received an unexpected call from her insurance company. They informed her that the Toyota Highlander Bryce was driving had required roadside assistance. A representative named Christian revealed that Bryce had run out of gas near Buttonwillow, California, approximately 3 hours north of the family's home in Laguna Niguel. Christian reported that Bryce's gas tank had been filled around noon, and his estimated time of arrival home was between 3 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. However, as the hours passed and Bryce failed to arrive or make contact, Karen's concern grew. By 6 p.m., with no word from Bryce for 6 hours, Karen filed a missing persons report. She also requested an emergency ping of Bryce's cell phone through AT&T. The results were alarming. Bryce was still in Buttonwillow, having remained in the same general area for about 9 hours. Local law enforcement located Bryce just 8 miles from where he had been at noon. Deputies reported that Bryce appeared lucid during their interaction. When they facilitated a call between Bryce and his parents, he was reluctant to speak. When Karen asked what he was doing, Bryce cryptically replied that he was blowing off steam. At approximately 8 p.m., Christian, the roadside assistance mechanic, made another crucial observation. He found Bryce still in the same location, meaning he had now been there for about 11 hours. Concerned, Christian decided to follow Bryce to the freeway to ensure he actually started his journey home. After about 30 minutes, when they reached the freeway, Christian felt confident that Bryce was indeed heading home and turned back. The last known communication from Bryce came at 2:09 a.m. on August 30th, when he informed his mother that he was too tired to continue driving and planned to rest at a stop area. What transpired in the following hours remains a mystery. At 8 a.m. on August 30th, police arrived at the Laspisa family home with distressing news. Bryce's car had been found abandoned and overturned near Castaic Lake, about 2 hours north of Laguna Niguel and an hour south of Buttonwillow. Investigators pieced together a partial timeline using traffic camera footage. Bryce was captured driving up a hill at 2:15 a.m. and again at 4:29 a.m., leaving a gap of over 2 hours unaccounted for. The search for Bryce Laspisa began immediately, but despite extensive efforts, no body was found. Investigators employed various tactics to piece together Bryce's movements and potential whereabouts. One significant lead came from bloodhounds used in the search. The dogs traced Bryce's scent from his abandoned car across a dam, but the trail abruptly ended at a truck stop. This puzzling development raised more questions than answers. Had Bryce been picked up by someone at the truck stop, or had he managed to obscure his trail? The vast, rugged terrain surrounding Castaic Lake complicated search efforts. The lake itself, covering over 11 square miles with depths up to 320 feet, presented its own set of difficulties for dive teams and sonar equipment. Investigators meticulously combed through Bryce's phone records, social media accounts, and bank statements, searching for any clues that might shed light on his state of mind or potential plans. They interviewed friends, classmates, and acquaintances from Sierra College, trying to understand the drastic change in Bryce's behavior in the days leading up to his disappearance. The use of Vyvanse, a prescription drug typically used to treat ADHD, became a point of interest. Investigators explored whether Bryce's recreational use of the drug, combined with alcohol, could have contributed to his erratic behavior and ultimate disappearance. However, toxicology reports from the small amount of blood found in the car were inconclusive. As the investigation progressed, several theories emerged. Some speculated that Bryce, overwhelmed by the pressures of college life and possibly dealing with undiagnosed mental health issues, had chosen to disappear voluntarily. Others feared he had been the victim of foul play, perhaps after accepting a ride from a stranger at the truck stop. The possibility of an accident was also considered. Could Bryce have been disoriented after the car crash and wandered into the wilderness? Extensive searches of the surrounding area, including the use of cadaver dogs and thermal imaging equipment, failed to provide any evidence supporting this theory. Despite the lack of concrete leads, the Laspisa family refused to give up hope. In 2018, 5 years after Bryce vanished, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department released age-progressed images of what Bryce might look like. These images sparked a new wave of tips and potential sightings, but none led to a breakthrough in the case. The initial delay in reporting Bryce missing, coupled with the vast search area and the passage of time, has made finding physical evidence increasingly difficult. Additionally, the lack of a clear motive or indication of foul play has left investigators with few concrete leads to pursue. Despite these obstacles, law enforcement has continued to follow up on every credible tip. They've utilized advanced technologies, including drone searches of previously inaccessible areas around Castaic Lake and sophisticated data analysis of cell phone records and social media activity. The Laspisa family has remained steadfast in their search for answers. They've worked with private investigators, consulted psychics, and maintained an active online presence to keep Bryce's case in the public eye. As of 2024, 11 years after Bryce's disappearance, the case remains open but unsolved. In the quiet town of Connorsville, Indiana, a chilling mystery unfolded on March 28, 1986. 18-year-old Denise Flume, a bright and ambitious high school senior, vanished without a trace. What began as a simple errand to retrieve a forgotten purse would evolve into one of Indiana's most perplexing cold cases, leaving a family devastated and a community searching for answers for nearly 4 decades. Denise Flume was no ordinary teenager. A senior at Connorsville High School, she excelled both academically and athletically. With dreams of studying microbiology at Miami University in Ohio, Denise was the treasurer of her school's science club and a talented multi-sport athlete, participating in track, volleyball, softball, and basketball. Her future seemed bright and full of promise. On the evening of March 27, 1986, Denise attended a party at a rural farm during her spring break. What started as a small gathering swelled to hundreds of attendees. Denise returned home that night, inadvertently leaving her purse behind at the party location. The following day, Good Friday, March 28th, Denise left her home around 12:30 p.m. to retrieve her purse. Before departing, she attempted to persuade friends to accompany her, but none were available. This detail would later raise questions about why Denise seemed hesitant to go alone. She drove off in her parents' cream-colored 1981 Buick Regal, telling her family she would return shortly. Denise never returned home. Her worried parents reported her missing that evening when she failed to come back. an action entirely out of character for their responsible daughter. The initial response from local law enforcement was frustratingly dismissive, chalking up her absence to typical teenage behavior. The following day, March 29th, brought the first significant development in the case. A farmer reported seeing Denise's car parked alongside Tower Road, a secluded gravel lane. The vehicle was found approximately 3 miles from the party location, locked and abandoned. The farmer noted that the car had been there since early afternoon the previous day, coinciding with the time Denise had left home. The discovery of Denise's abandoned car marked the beginning of an investigation that would span decades, fraught with false leads, confusing timelines, and missed opportunities. Initial searches of the area where the car was found yielded no clues as to Denise's whereabouts. Complicating matters, conflicting reports emerged about Denise's movements on the day she disappeared. An unnamed friend claimed to have seen Denise at a local fashion bug store that afternoon, but the clothing description provided didn't match what Denise was wearing when she left home. Adding another layer of complexity to the timeline, it was revealed that less than an hour after Denise left to retrieve her purse, an unidentified distant cousin had returned the purse to Denise's house. This raised questions about why Denise would have continued her journey if the purse had already been returned. The lead detective assigned to the case was a cousin of Denise's father, David Flume, which later led to questions about the objectivity and thoroughness of the initial investigation. Documentation was sparse, with the detective relying heavily on memory rather than detailed notes. In August 1988, a cruel hoax briefly reignited hope. An unidentified woman called from Norfolk, Virginia, claiming to be Denise. The caller demonstrated knowledge of personal details that only Denise would know, prompting Judy and David Flume to travel to Norfolk. Upon arrival, they discovered it was a false lead. The woman admitted to calling because she thought she had seen Denise at a local shopping center. Despite the emotional toll, the Flumes chose not to press charges. As the case grew colder, attention turned to Denise's ex-boyfriend, Sean McClung. The couple had broken up about a month before Denise's disappearance. Shortly after she vanished, McClung left town, moving to Arizona. While briefly questioned early in the investigation, he was not initially considered a prime suspect. His departure and apparent lack of involvement in the search efforts would later draw scrutiny. In 2007, Detective Scott Jarvis of the Indiana State Police was assigned to the cold case. Despite following up on numerous leads, no significant breakthroughs emerged. However, Jarvis maintained that even as the chances diminished with time, there was always hope for resolution. In 2014, in an effort to leverage advancing technology, samples of Denise's DNA from a baby tooth were submitted to the Indiana State Police Lab and the National DNA Database System. Unfortunately, no matches were found, leaving investigators without the breakthrough they had hoped for. A significant development came in December 2018 when Sheriff Joey Laughlin, now leading the investigation, interrogated Sean McClung. The previous year, McClung had failed a voice stress test, raising suspicions. Despite rigorous questioning, McClung did not provide any new information at that time. On July 9, 2020, when McClung, who had been arrested on an unrelated fraud charge, confessed to Denise's 1986 murder. According to his statement, Denise had picked him up on the day of her disappearance, they argued, and he killed her. He claimed to have called friends to help move her body. McClung was charged with voluntary manslaughter, a Class B felony. In an unusual move, prosecutors offered McClung a deal. If he could lead authorities to Denise's remains, he would be granted immunity from the murder charge. However, it quickly became apparent that McClung was unable to provide the location of Denise's body. As a result, the voluntary manslaughter charge stood, and McClung recanted his confession. Before these questions could be fully explored in court, another twist occurred. On September 26, 2020, just months after his arrest and confession, Sean McClung died from an undisclosed terminal illness at the age of 56. His death before trial left many aspects of the case unresolved and denied the Flume family the closure they had long sought. Despite McClung's death, efforts to locate Denise's remains continued. On April 28, 2021, Ekko Search Midwest, in conjunction with CCRT, Indiana K-9 Search and Recover, and the Fayette County Sheriff's Department, conducted an extensive search in various undisclosed areas of Fayette County. While the search did not yield any specific discoveries, it helped eliminate certain locations, narrowing the focus for future efforts. The case took another turn in March 2024, when David and Judy Flume filed a lawsuit requesting access to a 326-acre property now owned by Erica Johnson. The lawsuit noted that the property belonged to Johnson's father at the time of Denise's disappearance, and Denise's car had been found just 1.3 miles away. Additionally, Erica's brother, Benjamin Q. Johnson, was identified as a person of interest in the case. However, this legal avenue was short-lived. On June 24, 2024, Fayette County Superior Court Judge Paul L. Freed granted a motion to dismiss the case. The defense successfully argued that a 6-year statute of limitations had long passed, starting from when Denise was declared legally dead on September 12, 1996. Despite this legal setback, a glimmer of hope emerged in August 2024. The Indiana State Police announced the creation of a new task force dedicated to examining some of the state's oldest cold cases involving missing persons. This development renewed the Flume family's optimism that Denise's case might finally be resolved. As it stands today, the disappearance of Denise Flume remains officially unsolved.